Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, welcome to Mersey Maritime. And this, the Maritime Exchange, the first hybrid Maritime Exchange we've done. So we hope you enjoy it. It's very much our contribution for the incredibly successful Maritime UK week that we're almost finished, but obviously we've saved the best to last. My name's Chris Shirling-Rook, I'm the CEO of Mersey Maritime. I'm also the Assistant Chair of Maritime UK with a focus on regions and supporting our cluster organisations throughout Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Today's all about partnership and collaboration, and we wouldn't even have dreamt launching today without the support of our members, our friends, our stakeholders, and of course our key sponsors of the day. So I'd like to thank the Royal Navy, Royal Haskening DHV, Nautilus International and Wirral Waters. We have some incredible speakers on our panels. We have a cracking announcement which we all know about with MKH over the next 3 hours or so. But it's not about us talking to you. We want to hear from you. We want to know your thoughts, your questions, your points of views, your experiences. So you'll see we have the mentimeter.com program. Please insert the code 7558290. Now basically what happens is all your questions, ideas, statements, they'll beam here to the studio where we'll see JJ, who's basically the smartest man in England, who is going to get all of this data and feed it up to our very able panel chairs and our panelists. So we knew that Mersey Maritime, or as Mersey Maritime, we had to do something to showcase and to champion the pressing issues and also the infinite opportunities and possibilities before us in our own industry, whether Brexit or COVID, levelling up, decarbonisation, or perhaps coastal communities. Having a platform for discussion is critical at any time, but perhaps none more so than at the moment. So what's this afternoon about? Put simply, in the next 3 hours or so, we're going to hear from some truly incredible thought leaders from across our industry spectrum who will give us their insights and guidance on some of the essential questions of the day. Not being put off by the sheer depth or complexity of these conversations, we've chosen to traverse perhaps the two biggest topics in mental health and wellbeing and tech and innovation. Again, though, we want your involvement, and you're going to be hearing this from us an awful lot. Please get involved with menti.com with the code 7558290. We want your questions, your tough questions, your thoughts. Be part of this journey with us. So we have our two panel discussions, and then in the middle, it's Maritime Knowledge Hub, and it's an update. We're not allowed to say launch because we're all superstitious. We can say the starting gun. We can say we're open for business. We can say we want you to partner with us now. We can talk about the potential breaking ground date of summer next year. But we're there and we're ready to welcome you on board as partners on this journey. So that's a sort of really brief update on our running order. So pop the kettle on, dust off the digestives and strap yourself in. I think it's going to be kind of cool. In a couple of seconds, we'll hear from our new Maritime Minister, Robert Courts MP. We'll then hand over to Ben Murray, CEO of Maritime UK, to chair the first vitally important and timely discussion with our expert panel on mental health and wellbeing. And again, remember the day is fully interactive, so please get involved. Now, without further ado, and I've always wanted to say this, John, can you run VT, please? The Maritime Minister.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here today at the Maritime Exchange as part of Maritime UK Week. I'm sorry that I'm not able to join you in person, but as you're all aware, events around the world are currently preventing us from meeting up as we would really like to. The Maritime Exchange has become a real highlight of the year, an opportunity to come together and discuss some of the key issues affecting the sector today. In the light of the pandemic that we've all been faced with, the maritime world has done wonders in keeping on working right around the globe. In every country, in every port, and on every ocean, seafarers kept the world supplied. But that dedication has come at a cost. Many seafarers have found themselves at sea for far longer than they could have possibly imagined. Being away from their friends, from their family, and from their homes, we have to accept this can have a massive impact on the mental health of this dedicated workforce. But they still kept working to ensure that we all could continue to fight the pandemic. We owe them all a huge debt of thanks for their service, their dedication, and their selflessness in supporting us all. The UK is fully aware of the sacrifices that people have made for us. That's why we've worked tirelessly on repatriation programmes and, together with the UN, set up the world's first summit on crew change, which resulted in international recognition of maritime workers and seafarers as key workers. To allow them to pass through the countries unhindered and freely, to be reunited with their families, and to ensure that trade kept flowing around the world. The UK was a beacon of hope to seafarers around the world, regardless of their nationality, because from the outset, I think we got it right. We fought for their rights and for their needs, keeping their mental and physical health a priority. My department has also sponsored MiFi units so that seafarers can make contact with their families while in UK ports. This equipment, which we've worked with the Merchant Navy Welfare Board and Seafarers UK to deliver, is a vital lifeline to people miles from home and, of course, anxious about their families and indeed their own well-being. The work to support seafarers is continuing, and as I am meeting more and more of our stakeholders, this remains a constant theme. As we emerge from the pandemic, we have an opportunity. This is an opportunity to review and to reshape how we work. We need a cleaner and greener sector, and there's no shying away from that. The challenge of delivering a lower carbon fleet is something that the UK is working hard on. New technology and new fuels are areas where I'm proud to say the UK is very strong, and rightly so. We are already seeing vessels that push the boundaries and demonstrate the course that shipping must take. An ultra-efficient ferry designed in the UK and operating in Pentland that emits 60% less CO2 than comparable ferries. An ongoing trial of hydrogen on another ferry operating in UK waters that is exploring the possibility of zero-emission operations using fuels produced by renewable energy. Fantastic achievements right here in the UK. And on the environment, it's testament that right here in Merseyside, the most technologically advanced research vessel, the RRS Sir David Attenborough, was built and launched just last year. This incredible ship will provide unrivaled insight into the environment we live in today, how it could look, and how we can work to change it for the better, protecting future generations by kick-starting this legacy. A British ship packed with British technology and named after the leading British naturalist. This vessel will show the world that we can build great ships, that we do lead on new technology, and we can be proud of it. It's our ambition to reinvigorate the shipbuilding industry that the UK had such a reputation for in the past. We can again have that respect. We can create more jobs, more opportunities, and teach more people new skills by investing in our manufacturing and technology fields. The Northern Powerhouse is so called because the North is a powerhouse, a rich and proud history of manufacturing, industry, and skills. We're levelling up the national divide, and that's why I'm so pleased to be here supporting the work our hosts, Mersey Maritime, are doing. Mersey Maritime's plans for a new Maritime Knowledge Hub here in one of the country's key maritime regions are absolutely fantastic. As an island nation, the coastal regions all around the UK are not only key for the maritime sector, but the nation as a whole. We want to stimulate those areas and ensure that they flourish. Combining the educational resources of our world-leading universities with industry and government is a great signal of how we can all work together for the advancement of the wider maritime sector. I look forward to hearing more details about this amazing £23 million project next week when I meet with Mersey Maritime. Thank you for joining me here today. Again, I'm sorry I can't be with you in person, but I hope you will find today a useful and interesting opportunity for discussion. And I'm really looking forward to seeing the outcomes of that discussion find their way and their place into the world of maritime. Thank you.
Minister, thank you so much. And I really think that sort of sets the tone for the day. And now for the mental health and wellbeing section. We all have stories and experiences with regards to mental health, some personal and some professional, all equally important. Now more than ever is the time to share these stories and best practices. So let's hear what our Mersey Maritime members have been up to.
Hi everyone, my name is Chrissy Clark and I'm the Programme Manager for Diversity and Skills at Maritime UK. In May 2020, we launched the Diversity in Maritime programme to bring together the sector, to challenge the status quo, to collaborate and to break down barriers for change. We have 4 fabulous networks: Women in Maritime, Mental Health in Maritime, Pride in Maritime and Ethnicity in Maritime, and we encourage you all to get involved. You are our positive disruptors and we are going to level the playing field for all.
Hi, Stuart White, Royal Esconing DHV. I'm so glad we're now talking about mental health. We have to break down those stigmas. We have a health and safety committee in our UK business. Last year we added wellbeing and mental health as part of their remit. The strategies coming out of that group, we've now trained a group of mental health first aiders. We have other support services and we're just encouraging our staff to listen. It is okay to talk about mental health. Thank you.
2 years ago at the MTC, we developed a wellbeing strategy to include physical and mental wellbeing. We recognised the importance of healthy living on all our colleagues. This included appointing and training over 30 mental health first aiders. We provided all colleagues with a LifeWorks app, which has lots of useful information and modules, including subsidised gym membership and other discounts at healthy living providers. We also trained all our managers how to recognise anxiety and stress in colleagues, and also provided a number of workshops. During lunchtimes, we provided exercise classes and continue to provide those online, including yoga. We even ran a laughing therapy. We worked with our online caterers to provide healthy menu choices and even provided colleagues with healthy juice shots to start the day. We've continued to work on how-to guides and we've had lots of lunch and learns with health experts coming in to talk about healthy living practices. Know your numbers, well woman, well men clinics, even providing flu jabs. We've done all sorts of things. And during the last few months, when it's been unsettling times for everybody and we've seen all our anxiety increase, we've continued to do this. We have weekly coffee catch-up sessions where it gives you an opportunity to talk about how you're feeling. We've produced a how to stay sane guide and lots of things in terms of what to do during restrictions and lockdown activities. We've done all of this because we recognise that it's important to provide a supportive, secure culture and environment for all our colleagues. This has been essential to the success of MTC.
Hello, my name is Lee Clark from Tappet Live. Now more than ever, we need to ensure the welfare of our seafarers. Here at Tappet Live, we are live streaming a clinical psychologist, Dr. Rachel Glenn Williams, to vessels across the globe using our revolutionary software and agreement with our communications partner Inmarsat. It has become more apparent we need to get on board rapidly to deliver wellbeing courses to ensure our seafarers have the tools to cope and manage their well-being. Thank you to Mersey Maritime for their continuing support, and I hope you all enjoy the conference today. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Colin Lavelle, Legal Director at Hill Dickinson LLP. In the current climate, we're driving the wellbeing of colleagues in numerous ways that include applying a flexible approach to working hours so that colleagues can better balance home-work life, offering financial contributions for home working equipment, running regular wellbeing surveys, and offering check-ins with our mental health first aiders. Additional areas of best practice include our wellbeing benefits such as Medicash and Bupa and 24/7 access to an employee assistance programme, HR welfare check-ins with anyone who is or appears to be struggling, and awareness campaigns on topics including mental health and suicide prevention. In recognition of these efforts, we've recently won the Working Families Award for Best Flexible Employer. Thank you very much.
Maintaining mental health is a critical business challenge. With so many of our employees working from home, juggling professional and personal responsibilities, or perhaps just feeling terrifically isolated, what can we do to help them maintain their productivity and their mental health and well-being? At Western Union, we had identified a number of initiatives prior to lockdown, which we continued to focus on, including providing professional help to identify and share coping strategies and direct us to the relevant resources. We all found that terrifically helpful, along with regular communication and team huddles. And guess what? Having a bit of fun came in there too.
My name is Wendy Freeman. I'm the Group Occupational Health Manager at Peel Ports. This has been a really difficult time for organisations and individuals alike. To look after our staff remains paramount, whether it's from communications and toolbox talks through to the procedures we put in place to keep the workplace as COVID safe as we possibly can. Mental health is more important now than ever. So we've developed our stress policy, our risk assessments associated with that policy. We've expanded our employee assistance programmes to improve the services offered to each of our employees. We've increased the size of the occupational health team quite significantly, and people can now self-refer in if they need some support. But also managers have a red flag system into occupational health should somebody go off with mental health problems. In my eyes, the occupational health team have been my heroes from the start of this because they've worked tirelessly. But I have to say that every single employee deserves the title of hero. They've come into work through very challenging times and just got on with their jobs. Thank you.
Some fantastic examples there of our members supporting each other and their staff. So now, as we move on to the Mental Health and Wellbeing panel, I'd like to introduce the chair of the panel, Ben Murray, CEO of Maritime UK. Ben, how are you?
Very well, Chris.
You found us okay in leafy Cheshire?
Leafy Cheshire, not Liverpool.
Not Liverpool, leafy Cheshire. And the studios are okay?
Absolutely fantastic to be at the Mersey Maritime Studios. And I was just saying, this feels very much like Jeremy Vine on election night. So it's a job well done to everybody, I think.
Well, I'll leave you to it. Good luck.
Thanks very much. Speak to you later. Good afternoon, everybody. I think it's really important that today's conference, what is a flagship event in the Maritime UK Week calendar, puts mental health and well-being at the top of its billing, alongside technology and innovation. I think it's fair to say that in years gone by, people have often felt that mental health and well-being has been a fluffy subject or an incidental one. And I think partly, if not wholly, due to the fact that we've been through the most significant financial and societal crisis on record, fortunately, that is now changing, whether that's due to loneliness from working at home, whether that's the seafarer crisis, whether that's the pressure as a sector of having to keep the country supplied. And we'll talk about all of those issues with our panel in a moment. Before I do that, I just want to remind you that this is an interactive conference and we want you to play your part. So go to menti.com and enter the code 7558290 and we'll be engaging you, put your questions in there, but also let us know very specifically what word comes to mind when you think of this question. What do you think of when you hear of mental health? When you hear the word mental health, what word comes to mind? Put that in there and we'll use the words that you come up with in a short while to structure our discussions. Now, if I could introduce to you our panel. We've got with us a fantastic panel of people from across the sector. I'm going to draw on them one at a time and introduce them so they can speak to you for about 5 minutes about what their interests in this topic are, what their roles are, and hopefully a little bit about what they'd like to discuss throughout the day. So Mark, if I can come to you first. Mark Dickinson, General Secretary of Nautilus. If you'd just briefly like to introduce yourself, explain what Nautilus's interest in this topic is, and a little bit about what you do as a union. Mark.
Thank you. On mute.
Mark, I think we just had a couple of difficulties hearing you. Could you just try again?
That's operator error.
Perfect. We're in business. Don't worry. Over to you.
So thanks, Ben. Thanks, Chris. And also thanks to the Minister for that uplifting introduction. My name's Mark Dickinson. I'm General Secretary of Nautilus International. That's the union for maritime professionals in the UK, the Netherlands and Switzerland. We've got about 21,000 members. They work across the entire maritime industry, predominantly officer ranks in the merchant navies, but much broader than that as well, because often they move into shore-based maritime cluster jobs that we're all familiar with. And also we organise inland waterways, predominantly in Europe, the Netherlands and Switzerland, as I've said. So we come to this debate about mental health and well-being from the perspective and with the backdrop, including my backdrop behind me, of a crew change crisis that you referenced, Ben. Thank you for that. 400,000 seafarers trapped at sea, unable to return home, and logically another 400,000 stuck at home, unable to return to sea. So we are staring down the barrel of a huge humanitarian crisis that, as we approach Christmas, becomes even more sharply into focus. We could be looking at close to 1 million seafarers in this predicament because of the measures taken to respond to the public health crisis that COVID-19 represents to all nations. The Minister highlighted the UK's approach, which is to be applauded, and I do very much appreciate how the UK approached this. First of all, by recognising seafarers as key workers and being absolutely firm on facilitating crew changes for seafarers here, and in reaching out to other governments. Unfortunately, other governments haven't responded in quite the same way and with quite the same sort of strategic focus as the UK has. So that has created the situation that we find ourselves in. So as a union working on behalf of our members, and also as part of a wider community of maritime and seafarer unions globally and within Europe, my union has been deploying its influence and resources to try and deal with the consequences of this humanitarian crisis. The seafarers have kept working, as has been recognised already by the Minister, delivering the essential goods, maintaining global supply chains throughout this crisis. They are the real heroes amongst many others, of course, but they are the often forgotten and unrecognised heroes in this. As a maritime nation, it is painful to acknowledge and to admit that we do suffer from sea blindness, and I think that that's something we have to address. Mersey Maritime, Maritime UK, all of the partners and collaborators today, we have to address that, because at the end of the day, we can and we must address mental health and well-being of all workers, seafarers in particular, I want to focus on. But there are some fundamentals that need to be addressed in the longer term, and that is about how we treat seafarers, how we see our industry as a maritime nation, and those issues need addressing in the longer term, while we address with the immediate issues of worsening mental health and poor well-being for seafarers. That's probably enough for me for now.
Great, thanks very much, Mark. And I think it's worth recognising that the fact that people have been designated as individuals through this crisis as key workers, it's allowed us to recognise that unique role of our workers in this sector, and seafarers in particular. I know we'll drill down into that in a moment when we come to the discussion. Next, I'd like to introduce Ben Lutzker from Case Medical. Ben, over to you. Would you like to just briefly introduce yourself and your company's interest in today's topic?
Sure, thanks, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ben Lutzker, and I'm the CEO of Case Medical. We're a Mersey Maritime partner. I've worked personally in the medical industry for nearly 20 years now. I'm not a clinician, but I've spent much of my career working hand in hand with clinicians to deliver services covering everything from immunisations and vaccines to CBT therapy, wellness programs, across a diverse range of industries, from offshore oil and gas, schools, education, shipping and logistics. In fact, Case Medical actually started our life in shipping in the Liverpool docks. I'm also a section chair within the British Healthcare Trades Association, which aims to represent and maintain quality standards in the healthcare and assistive technology industry. At Case Medical, we specialise in the provision of occupational health services and medical supplies, predominantly into the private sector, but more and more we're dealing with public sector organisations such as the emergency services, NHS and the government. It's therefore been a strange time over the last number of months because we've not only had to deal with our customers to provide the support, advice and services they need to keep their staff healthy and safe during a pandemic, but we've also been concentrating more than ever before on our own staff, trying to ensure that we're looking after our own team as well as we look after our customers. Because of the nature of K's business, K's staff are key workers, and we've been dealing with the challenge of staying open for business since the beginning of this crisis. We've therefore been at the forefront of setting best practice for operating during COVID-19, both in our own workplace as well as those of our customers. It's been paramount in everything that we've done, both internally and externally, to ensure that the mental health of employees is being considered just as much as their physical health and safety. I'd like to be able to say that being a company who delivers health and wellbeing services, it's been easy to ensure that everything that we've done in this crisis came naturally. But the reality is we're quite literally living in unprecedented times. And as a result, we are all learning as we go. And like most other businesses, we've had to adapt to the changes and challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis. We're lucky to be in a business that benefits from a wealth of expertise in health and safety and occupational health. But many of the companies that we deal with don't have this in-house knowledge. And having worked with many of our customers during the pandemic, know how difficult it's been for them to provide the crucial mental health and wellbeing support that their staff need. In particular, in the new norm where remote working has become so common, where isolation, lack of social interaction, loneliness has been a major consideration for employers, no matter what industry they're working in. As I've said, my experiences and learnings over the past couple of months on how best to deal with mental health and wellbeing during a pandemic have come from working both within my own organisation and that of many of our clients. But I'd actually like to briefly share a more personal experience. Just over 3 weeks ago, a close colleague of mine tested positive for COVID, and I had to isolate because I'd come into contact with him. I was lucky enough to have access to a safe environment. I was lucky enough to have access to COVID tests throughout the period that I was being isolated. And I could stay away from my young wife and children. Actually, the children are young, not so much my wife. I was able to not put them at risk, as well as requiring them to quarantine as well. The reason that I mention this is because despite these luxuries, and despite the fact that I'd consider myself to be a pretty resilient individual, within a very short space of time, just a matter of days, I started to have feelings of anxiety, paranoia and loneliness. However mild they were, I noticed the effect that the situation was having on me and the colleagues who were in a similar position to me. So I started to have a better understanding of how these situations affect people, in particular, those people who are in more difficult situations than me. The reason I bring that up is because we can't underestimate the effect that this pandemic is having on all of us. And it's not just those who are seemingly in a difficult position. So we need to be as vigilant as possible with our friends, our family and our colleagues during these trying times, and provide as much support for those around us as possible. But let's not forget that mental health issues are not new, they're not novel, and they're not only related to the pandemic, and that we have to continue to improve mental health and wellbeing services for the future. I look forward to answering some of your questions in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ben. That was, I think, a really useful insight to how all of us as individuals have been affected through this. And I think we'll hopefully come on to talk about this later. But I guess one reflection for me is that, yes, there's focus at the moment on mental health, and we don't want, as the crisis recedes, for people's interest and awareness and understanding of the topic to fall away too. So we need to put in place a more structural and more firm and robust understanding of this issue and our response to it. So I look forward to talking about that a bit further with you in a moment. If I bring in our third panellist now, Cecilia from Royal Haskening. Cecilia, over to you if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about why you're involved in, and I know I personally know, but your role with Royal Haskening and how that lends itself to today's discussions.
Thank you, Ben, and good afternoon to everybody. So my name is Cecilia Harvey, and I'm the EDI lead, so Equality, Diversity and Inclusion lead at Royal Haskening. We're an international engineering consultancy. Our services spanned across the maritime sector, but we also have business lines in industry and buildings, water and transport and planning. As an EDI practitioner and a member of the Diversity and Maritime Task Force that Ben spoke about earlier, and we heard from Chrissy as well, mental health has actually been a recurring topic in all of the diversity networks. And I'm a true believer that sort of our mental health and our physical health both make up who we are as individuals. So my driver is to, when we say we really want people to bring their true self to work, that includes their mental state. If I can bring you to some of the facts that I find quite fascinating and interesting. So I'm an anthropologist by trade. I'm not a sort of engineer, but when we feel valued, we operate better, and I really am a true believer that that feeling of exclusion that people can feel, or alienation, or worries about being discriminated because of a mental health condition, are really I feel devastating. And if we think that the feeling of exclusion is an emotion which is dealt with in the part of our brain called the amygdala, and that's the same part of our brain that deals with physical pain. So the brain doesn't distinguish between whether it's a social pain or a physical pain, but it actually deals with that just as pain. So my real driver is to make sure that that stigma drops. That we change the narrative on mental health, and we talk about it more openly, and we have brave and sort of honest conversations about that. So at Royal Haskening, as I said, I'm the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion lead, but I'm also a mental health first aider. I sit on the Health and Safety Committee, and actually its remit is to look at the sort of general well-being of all our staff, both physical and mental. And I guess like some of the other panelists, if we think of the importance that we place on risk assessments when people go to site, on certainly from boarding vessels and working in remote locations, we place a huge amount of resources and efforts to make sure that our staff are safe. That safety needs to also be mentally. So I'm a really true believer that we need to be willing and open to raise awareness about this. The information and the educational piece about the range of mental health conditions that exists and actually how debilitating they are is really crucial. I think one of the biggest issues is you don't tend to sort of understand as much about mental health because these conditions are very often invisible. So when you're confronted with a physical disability, whether the person is brought into the company already with a physical disability, or maybe has become disabled on the job, we care for them, we respect them, we make sure that they feel included, and it's I guess easier from a sort of from our sort of human instinct point of view to address that because it's visible to us. Now, what is invisible is just as challenging for an individual as a physical disability, and certainly something that I learned in the mental health first aid course that I took. Is that if you are affected by mild depression, that is likened to sort of other mild sort of physical conditions, and certainly if you are experiencing severe depression, that is likened to having been exposed to a stroke and have severe long-term standing consequences. So I think the recently listened to a podcast, and one of the interesting things is maybe the relatability of the issue. So if someone says to us that they're suffering from a migraine or a headache, because most of us have probably experienced that, or we know what that brings, we can empathize more easily. And that's rendered more difficult if you haven't personally had the experience. But I would say certainly we have a duty to all our staff, as well as people that we work with, contractors, collaborators, and everybody that surrounds us and that we work with, to ensure that they mentally can feel safe to have conversations, and that they know that they're going to be looked after and they are really genuinely cared for. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Cecilia. And finally, to introduce our last panellist, I think it's really important that across the board we're seeing much more engagement and work between the commercial and the defence side of the sector. So from the Royal Navy, delighted to introduce Commander Simon Howell.
Good afternoon, thank you very much indeed. I'm Commander Simon Howell, as you said. I've been in the Navy for 39 years, and the first half of my career was pretty much spent largely at sea as a watchkeeper, navigator, or a principal warfare officer latterly. But I also commanded a small ship, a minesweeper, and my final job about 20 years ago was as the second in command of a frigate. I've spent about the last 20 years ashore in different jobs, but broadly I've been in sort of people management, executive roles, including command of one of our shore units. And my current role as the commander responsible for executive policy in the Navy, I've been doing for about 6 years, so quite a long time for one job. The executive in the Navy really includes the chain of command in ships and indeed all our units ashore and at sea, so Royal Marines, Fleet Air Armed Submarines, and it's the executive that really deal day to day with people. And picking up on something that was just said, I've probably spent much of the last 6 years trying to find ways of ensuring that our people feel valued. I think that is absolutely critical. But I am responsible for many of the sort of people policy areas, a huge range from emotive but somewhat dull things like uniform and appearance policy, through alcohol and substance misuse, and I'm responsible for the compulsory drug testing team, and also discipline policy. But one of my main responsibilities is for what we call the divisional system, which is a very ancient system, 350 years old, originally based around gun crews, but it divides up our ships companies, the people in our units. It doesn't matter how big or small they are, but it divides them into smaller groups of people, usually of the same branch or specialization, so engineers or communicators or logisticians. And that system enables us to manage, lead, develop, and support our people. It's clearly developed over the last 350 years and indeed continues to do so. In fact, there's currently a significant review of that system, which will hopefully deliver one that empowers people, promotes the RN's culture of shared values, behaviours and leadership whilst harnessing technology. We want to improve the system such that it will be efficient, inclusive and be an adaptive support structure, placing the individual's effectiveness and as such operational capability. I mean, you wouldn't expect me in the Navy to leave out that operational capability piece, that at its heart. You may have wondered why I spent a little bit of time explaining this, but it is quite simple, really, relating to mental fitness, mental health. We firmly believe that the management and maintenance of good mental health largely, not entirely, relies on good management, leadership, and indeed sort of cohesion, team building, that sort of thing. And this is not only the responsibility of the command team, although their example is critical, but it's absolutely everyone's responsibility, particularly those in leadership and management positions, which in the services, well, and indeed anywhere, can be from the young Royal Marine corporal or leading hand in the Navy, all the way through the rank structures up to more senior people. And indeed, the divisional structure, because the divisional or the regimental structure in the Royal Marines involves everyone and offers support and a listening ear at every level within a unit. As a person responsible for the health of those systems, I really have assumed the role as the non-clinical lead for mental health, mental fitness and resilience in the Royal Navy. And I mention non-clinical because, as I'm sure you will all be aware, Defence does have our own medical branch, and it'll come as no surprise to any of you that we have our own clinical mental health practitioners. So we have mental health nurses and a number of psychiatrists. And the capability, as is common across the NHS, is clearly in demand and has become more so as the stigma has gradually reduced over recent years. But therefore, it's largely the job of the system I explained earlier, the divisional system, to try and promote mental fitness. And we've traditionally placed huge emphasis on physical fitness, and we're certainly trying to up our game on mental fitness and resilience, which hopefully will reduce the demand on the mental health services, by reducing the stigma, making people more aware, getting that conversation started. So most people, they don't go straight into the mental health services, much as in the NHS. They'll be seen by a naval GP, unless they're in crisis, where of course they can go straight through the system more quickly. So it's similar to the NHS. Fortunately, the numbers that are referred to our mental health services are relatively small, about 2% of the Royal Navy, and the vast majority of those that are seen by them and treated return to normal service and are made fully fit. So I think I would say, there is much to do, and we are moving forward all the time, quite rapidly in this space. But we all accept that it is a critical area to get right, and we are putting quite a lot of resource behind the whole mental health and wellbeing area. Thank you.
Great. Thanks very much, Simon. It's really interesting, and there's a lot of crossover clearly between what you've said and what our other panelists have said. And I'd like to get into some of the detail there now. Just a reminder to everybody, if they could go on to menti.com and enter that one word they think of when they hear mental health, and we'll use that to structure some of our discussions in a moment. Just to our panel members, if you could start to have a think about what your response to those words are, we'll come to those in a moment. But perhaps because it's really front and centre in terms of the headlines at the moment, Mark, if I can come to you, the seafarer, the crew change crisis. I don't think now's the time to talk about what the solutions are, political or otherwise, because that's for other fora. But could you just share with everybody what you're hearing from your members, people who are on those ships or know people who are, how it's affecting people, and what you're doing as a union and what others are doing to try and support people, and what you've found to be most effective in that? Mark, I think you've done what we all do at least once or twice a week, and you're on mute still, so apologies if we just try again.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's a tough ask in the 30 seconds or so you probably want me to cover it in, but I'm seeing depression, loneliness, stress on the screen coming through as key words, and that could sum up what it's like to be on board a ship without any end in sight. Now, my members would be typically working 2 to 3, 4 months in a normal rotation, with anything between 2 and 4 months leave to look forward to in a normal situation. And they're having their trips extended, weeks and months. And that is a struggle. And I have to say, as someone who can speak from some personal experience, although many years ago, that a delay of 24 hours in repatriation is really quite tough to take. The situation now for many seafarers is that, beyond my membership into the global supply of seafarers, we're looking at seafarers that now could be looking at their second Christmas away from home, 15, 16, 17 months on board. And if that isn't bad enough in terms of trying to deal with that, and the loneliness and the disconnection from family. It's the uncertainty of not knowing when the situation is going to be resolved. And if I could just sort of emphasize another point that escalates the stress even further, that could drive that depression, is being told that it is going to be tomorrow and then have it cancelled on you. And this is what's happening right now. What can we do? Well, of course, politically, we are working with the ship owners. I have to say the partnership and collaboration that Chris pointed to started this great event about the importance of partnership and collaboration is being carried out in practice nationally, regionally, and internationally. But it's trying to get governments to take action to unlock the crew change crisis that is the real frustration. And there's a lot of work going on practically on the ground, trying to arrange flights, trying to arrange testing, trying to arrange. There are facilities being arranged in Manila for hotels for seafarers by unions that we work with, their own testing arrangements as well in order to get seafarers away. We've provided support to individual members in the UK around difficulties having their key worker status recognised, because it's great when the DFT, the Department for Transport, make those pronouncements, getting the Home Office or the Foreign Office or the Health Department to understand that. And border control, we've had difficulties with them understanding that seafarers returning from trips abroad or joining ships are key workers, and therefore they should be facilitated. So that kind of work goes on. And so that's a bit of a tour de force in as little time as I possibly could. And if there's any further follow-up, I'm happy to come back in, of course.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, clearly an incredibly difficult time for a lot of people. I know the union's doing what it can to support, and I think what we all want to know is how do we collectively, in a less than ideal situation, help colleagues and others across the sector. And I think we'll try and come on to that when we talk about some of the practical solutions. Cecilia, I wanted to just ask a question of you very quickly. You mentioned the diversity in Maritime Task Force. Could you just explain to people how mental health and good mental health and all the issues associated with that, why that sits within sort of diversity? Because it might not appear obvious to a lot of people, and I think it would be useful to understand why it sits there.
Yes, so the Diversity of Maritime Task Force addresses some of the sort of protected characteristics, and as we saw in the clip earlier, it addresses gender, race, and sexual orientation. And I think the reason why it's about diversity is again, if I come back to the element of we are individuals, and everything that makes us up is our experience, is who we are in our home lives as well, and it's diversity in the widest possible sense, and that includes our mental health. Now, I think we all can agree that everyone has mental health, and certainly in this period, as certainly Ben also mentioned the personal experience, we have all had sort of peaks and troughs at this time, and certainly some situations that we've been put in or challenged, whether it's furlough, whether it's sort of homeschooling or various other challenges, have put us in a situation where if we don't accept that there is such a different array of differing circumstances, so that diversity is a diversity of individual circumstances and circumstances that individual people are living. And again, I'm sure that not all seafarers are living the same experience. They'll be challenged in the things that they are exposed to, or in the times that they've been away. But in terms of diversity, I liken it very much to the individual's experience, and there are so many different cases, and so when we talk about that diversity, we want to make sure that everybody is included in considerations about mental health, and the acceptance that these mental health conditions range from being short-term, long-term, and the reasons also why people are affected, and the external conditions and factors that affect our mental health are ever present. I mean, I personally can share sort of, and I'm sure we'll talk about connectivity later, but I personally feel much more disconnected in this connected world. So I think it's misleading sometimes to think that we have this technology that connects us, but are we sort of? I feel it's very easy sometimes to hide behind a screen. So whereas technology is really important to make sure that people are included and are aware of what is happening in their organizations and are contactable and are made to feel still part of an organization or a team. At the same time, it's so anti our human nature not to be social or in a social space, certainly for people working at home. So I think when you sort of, hopefully I've answered your question, but in terms of diversity, we're talking about diversity of circumstances. And each of those diversity of circumstances makes up a diversity of mental health condition and wellness.
No, thanks, Cecilia. That really does explain it. And I think now that people have come into a situation where they're also experiencing challenging mental health circumstances, people can understand, as they can with all diversity areas or protected characteristics, that this is something about all of us. It's about individuals. So thanks very much for that. You spoke in your remarks there about isolation, and we'll get the word cloud up in a moment. But one of the things that we have seen, we've all been talking about technology and how that's been fantastic because we've been able to see people more. But I think you're right. It's in some ways it's a false interaction, a false connection. Ben, just in terms of running your company, as I know you do, have you found that your team have struggled with not being? I know you say you're key workers and people have been able to carry on, but in terms of the people you work with, your own company, has that lack of face-to-face interaction, has that been something that's really affected your team? And if so, how have you sought to try and handle that?
Sure. So as I mentioned, we have been essentially open for business since the beginning of the pandemic. However, we did have a couple of months where the office closed down and we just had our logistics operation open. During the early stages where people were working from home, we tried to essentially increase the amount of communication. Now, obviously, if you're not in a face-to-face environment, and I mean physically, then it does have a very different feeling to everybody. But I think one of the things that's key about communication, and it's been mentioned briefly on the panel already today, is trying to reduce people's anxiety of not knowing what's going on. And I think the better informed people are about their situation, what's likely to happen in the future and so on, the safer people feel, the more confident people feel. And we tried to essentially continue that even though we were doing it at a distance. We were thankfully able to come back into the office, and I think there was, interestingly, a very mixed bag of feelings between those who were desperate to get back into the working environment, desperate to be in a more social environment, and those that were actually quite scared and apprehensive about coming back in. And one of the things that we've tried to do as an organization, both internally and when we speak to our customers, is try and ensure that people feel safe in the environment which they're working in. And, you know, we've discussed about individuals and how different people feel about what is essentially the exact same situation. And one person might feel completely safe and another might feel very worried about the situation that they're coming into, whether it be because they're worried about getting COVID, whether it be because they have to travel on public transport to get into work, or whether it's because they have a shielding parent that they're looking after. So in answer to your question, Ben, one of the things that we've tried to do throughout the whole pandemic is try and bring people together more. And I think more so than ever, the communication, whether it be face-to-face or whether it be online over Skype whether it be Teams or whether it be, you know, any other online method. The interaction on a personal basis is really important, and there needs to be a feedback loop. How are people feeling? So it's not just us communicating to them, but them communicating back to us and us actually doing something about what they're saying. Yes, we've been lucky enough to be back in the office, and that's been great. But interestingly, one of the things that I've noticed in the last few weeks after having come back to the office is actually some of the things that we'd put in place when we were out of the office, like the online social events and so on, have kind of fallen off the radar a little bit. And actually, most people still aren't going out and having social events outside of the work environment, particularly in Liverpool now. That's going to be completely stopped. So trying to remember to actually bring those back in place as well. So it's been a challenge. But just one more point that I'd like to make, Ben, is as much as we are in a horrendous situation with the pandemic and a lot of people are suffering terribly, you know, working in an industry with mental health, I would like to just point out that from my perspective, the additional spotlight that has been drawn to mental health during this crisis has been fantastic, and long may it continue. The fact that we're noticing it so much at the moment is because, frankly, the spotlight wasn't bright enough before. And we have to remember, long after the virus goes away, we need to continue the learnings that we've been able to achieve in this last few months.
Thanks, Ben. I absolutely agree with that last point in particular about we've got the spotlight there, we're learning how to do things, but we need to make sure that that continues. And I'd like to ask all the panel in a moment, how do we keep the momentum, as it were, on servicing people's needs and creating an environment where people feel they can talk about this. But before we get there, I've got a couple more questions. And this for Simon, I think. If we have the word cloud there, the two biggest words that have come up. So all of you watching at home and in your office, you've typed in these words in response to what is the most pertinent word or phrase when you think of mental health. And by far and away, the two biggest words are depression and stigma. Now, unless there's two completely different cohorts of people, the people who have written depression have also written stigma. And I know there's lots of different people writing, but it shows the two big issues there. Now, it shows that there's clearly a problem. People recognize that depression, either from their own point of view or from colleagues or friends or family, is present and is the one thing they think of in terms of affecting mental health. But clearly, there's also a stigma in being able to talk about it. And that's heartbreaking, that people are aware of this illness of depression and aren't, because of the stigma that exists, aren't able to talk about it, which means we can't help respond to it, we can't help solve it. So Simon, recognising your role within the Royal Navy, is this something that you're experiencing as well? Because I know that, and it'd be interesting to see if there's a difference between men and women as well, because I know that's something that's been brought up here about men not being able to talk about it. But my question to you, Simon, is this something that you've seen in the Royal Navy in terms of stigma around issues like depression? And if so, have you got any suggestions about how others, companies, us as a sector can respond to that stigma and try and break down those barriers to talking about the most important issue?
Thank you. Yeah, funnily enough, I wrote down stigma in my notebook. My other one was stress, but depression, yeah, absolutely, and stress is there. No, I think I mentioned it in my opening piece. Trying to break down or reduce the stigma around the whole subject, and we don't really like the term mental health because, as has already been said, everybody has mental health. What we want to, think about is either promoting mental fitness or reduce mental illness by what we're doing. So yes, absolutely. And I think, whilst I completely agree that the current situation has certainly put a spotlight on this, the spotlight on mental fitness, mental health, suicide, that sort of thing has been firmly on defence for a few years, as you're probably all aware. Although a lot of that, frankly, is around veterans' mental health, but that nonetheless, it is still certainly an issue in serving personnel as well. And I think probably all I can say is that, you know, trying to produce, we've produced a lot of myth busting. So we've produced little booklets, little leaflets, which try to break down, you know, the whole, some of the myths around mental fitness, trying to use the term mental fitness and using it alongside physical fitness. As I mentioned earlier, you know, people in defence are very keen on their physical fitness, and we spend hours and hours a week trying to make sure that we are physically fit. Indeed, if we're not physically fit, then we can find ourselves unfit to employ. But that's the same thing with mental fitness, and there are simple ways, as I sort of trying to explain that it is down to our own, you know, thinking, trying to get away from the desk, getting away from the computer, getting out into the fresh air, that sort of thing. But we've promoted lots of the stuff that is out there. The NHS websites and some of the charities websites are fantastic, and we shamelessly promote those, as well as some of the stuff that Defence in itself is producing. And you know, each of the services has their own sort of portals, or health and wellbeing portals and that sort of thing. So we have some of the stuff tailored around our own people. But I think we just have to keep the pressure on. I mean, on World Mental Health Day over the weekend, we had the Chief of Defence Staff and the heads of each of the services coming out with little talking heads, which was great. We pushed out and we produced an infographic to be published on the same day. I think it's, you know, there's no quick fixes with these sorts of things. You just have to keep on going at it. We've been going at it probably with a vengeance, I would say, probably for about 2 years, that sort of thing. So it does take time, but breaking down that stigma is absolutely vital. Getting people to talk and open up, which is why I think for us, the divisional system and our sort of leadership and management techniques, making sure that we treat people properly is vital. Because if people don't feel they can open up, if they haven't got if they can't trust someone, then you're in trouble, really.
Great, thanks very much, Simon. I'm conscious of time, we've got about 5 minutes. I've got a few questions I'd like to get through to the panel. That other word that was really front and centre in that word cloud was depression. And I just want to, from an individual's point of view and from an employer's point of view, ask a question: what should you do if either as an individual you are experiencing depression, or if you are an employer, you either are aware of a colleague or a team member that is struggling? So I thought that would make sense, Mark, to ask you from an individual point of view, from the union background, if one of your members is, or regardless, an individual is suffering from depression, what's your advice to them? And then I'll come to Ben, perhaps from a company point of view, if you're aware of somebody in your workforce who you're aware of, either they've told you or you've picked up the signs of somebody who's struggling, what they should do. So if you could both, I'll come to Mark first.
I think it's really important for people to talk to each other, and it's also important for colleagues to look out for other people. And I think, you know, Simon was saying about the divisional system in the Royal Navy, that's about people looking out for each other and being vigilant and being supportive and caring. And is it too much to ask in this cutthroat world in which we live in today, where everything's about the individual, where we just sort of think about others around us, be more collective, which is the essence of trade unionism, I have to say. That's what it's about. It's about getting together and being stronger together and having a stronger voice. So, you know, this conversation is really part of that. This wider recognition, addressing this stigma that the word cloud is flagging up as one of the key words as well, is really important. But I think, if I may just abuse this opportunity to say that we also have to think about the longer term. Yes, we need that conversation to continue. We need to support each other. We need training and mentoring. All of that is really, really important. But what is really fundamental for me, thinking about the longer term, is that we need to look at, thinking about seafarers in particular, my area, is addressing their living and working conditions. That has to be the core. We need better communications between ship and shore to connect seafarers with their families on an ongoing basis. You know, we need to drag the industry into this the 20th century, not in the 21st century, in that regard. Improved leave periods, improved pay, improved retirement savings, all the things that go towards making people feel secure and valued. That's a conversation that COVID-19 has really put the spotlight on our industry, and I think that is a positive. That's the silver lining, because we need to now continue that conversation and fix this industry for the better for everyone. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Mark. And we are rapidly running out of time. So Ben, if you could quickly give some advice from an employer perspective, if they find themselves in this position with regard to
Sure, I'll keep it quick. Cecilia's already mentioned mental health first aiders in the workplace, and I think I'd just like to reiterate how vital they are and what a fantastic thing that it is to have mental health first aiders in the workplace. The difference between mental health first aiders and some other things that go on in the workplace is they're generally your peers. So it takes some of that difficulty away from being able to actually speak to someone. You don't always want to speak to your manager about an issue that you have. That being said, I would like to promote occupational health and the importance of occupational health within the workplace, because occupational health can provide fantastic facilities by way of therapy, CBT, and various other things that can have a massive impact in a relatively short space of time for people. So please, if you're suffering at work, or you have colleagues that are suffering, please ask about occupational health in your workplace.
Great, thanks, Ben. And apologies, for the second time this week, I haven't done the best job of chairing and bringing all the issues in, but I think it's because there's so many topics that are important to discuss. Unfortunately, we've now got a question and answer session, and I think we'll try, Cecilia, through that period of time to bring out how people can get involved with the task force, with the mental health network in particular. I know you're involved with that, because we've established this task force and the network as a safe space for people to come and be involved. And I think it's really important, whether we bring it out now in the Q&A or afterwards when we're contacting people, but we want them all to get involved directly and continue this discussion. So, as many of you have said, this spotlight doesn't go out, and we continue to build awareness and understanding and a space where people can talk about this. Chris, I'm going to hand over to you now for the question and answer session.
Ben, thank you so much for that. And your questions, we've had absolutely tons of them. So thank you for thank you for sending those in. If we don't ask all the questions, it's probably because we think some of them have already been asked. Ben, Mark, Simon, Cecilia, good afternoon. Lovely to see you, and thank you so much for your support today. I found this absolutely fascinating. I'm just going to get stuck in. You haven't seen these questions, so I wish you the best of luck. This is the exciting bit. Okay, so this is the first question, and I'm going to put this to Ben, I think, initially. Ben, is mental well-being a line manager issue or the responsibility of the HR team?
Okay. It's an interesting question, and it's phrased in an interesting way. Mental health, in my opinion, comes under the bracket of occupational health. And as you and I have discussed in the past, Chris, I fundamentally believe that occupational health falls under the umbrella of HR. It needs to be a combined approach, and it needs to ensure that the line managers who are looking after their teams have the support of the organisation, both in HR, occupational health, and whatever other division of the business that is appropriate to them. Because we have to remember, not all organisations have occupational health, not all organisations have mental health first aiders, etc., etc. So, in my opinion, we need to give the line managers the training and development to be able to deal with mental health issues.
Thank you. And Cecilia, if I may also put the same question for you, where does this sit? Is it with the line manager? Is it with the HR team? And let me make it a little more complicated for you. What if a member of the executive team has noticed one of their team may need a little bit of support?
Thank you. Well, I was actually going to say it's everybody's responsibility. So we work with people, alongside people, for people, and so I think it's really everyone's responsibility to make sure that it gets the prominence that it needs. Certainly, line management and a sort of top-down approach is important when highlighting that this is now, that it's well in the spotlight, and as Mark and some of the other panelists mentioned earlier, we're going to keep it in the spotlight. So I certainly think that from a sort of top-down point of view, it is important, and line managers certainly have a duty to filter that down also. But I really would say it's everyone's responsibility, and you need to start with yourself. So you need to also recognize that you have mental health and you require to be mentally healthy, to be capable in what you do, but also to sort of how you address your colleagues and your family and your other loved ones. And coming back to the sort of more complicated element to your question, I think I think it's talking about it and normalizing it, because I think if you're talking about someone high ranking like a CEO noticing something, it shouldn't be made any more of a bigger deal as it would be if it was their son or their daughter or anyone else experiencing it. And I think part of the problem with the stigma is that very often we amplify the problem by making it not normal to talk about, and you know, to take this opportunity to talk about, if I'd entered a word in the Mentimeter, I would have actually said 1 billion, because that is the number of people that suffer from a mental health disorder or close to, and for me that's very stark. And so that's a lot of people that you know, are suffering in various degrees. But I think to answer your question, for me it's everyone's responsibility.
Cecilia, thank you. And we have tons of questions, so we're just going to get through as many as we can. Mark, if I can ask you the next question, and this is all about seafarers and the sort of cultural aspect. And it's about officers and crew, maybe different nationalities. The ship owners and the charterer, different. Ship registration is likely to be remote. And of course, the ship is always functioning, working, many miles away from home. So what aspect of cultural differences do we need to think about when we think about mental health and well-being?
God, that's a really, I mean, that was a great summary of the sort of modern, the diversity and complexity of the modern shipping industry in that one question. So that was well put. The answer isn't so easy to respond to. I start from the premise that you know, the mental health could affect anybody. It doesn't sort of target any particular. It doesn't target officers more than ratings. It doesn't target Filipinos more than Brits. You know, Filipinos being the sort of #1 crew supply country, maybe 20% of the global labour force. My membership in the UK, the Netherlands, and indeed in Switzerland is much lower down in the league table of labour supply. But I think the profession, we are all maritime professionals. We are all susceptible to the pressures that the industry, I would say uniquely, but I'd probably be over-egging that, present to us. And the support services that are there are more complex because of the complexity of the industry. So there are unions, there are good ship owners, there are good ship managers, and there are port state interventions, there are flag state interventions, there are the charities, very strong on Merseyside in particular, Missions to Seafarers, Sailor Society, Apostleship to the Sea. We are all working together, networking and supporting the ITF inspectors. We have one in the Northwest as well. We're all there supporting seafarers on the ships, and that collaboration is really important to support the mental health and well-being of that global seafaring workforce.
And this is to Simon now, sort of Royal Navy question. What would you say, Simon, is the best practice that the Navy has brought into business, certainly during lockdown, to support the staff? And I suppose that's just the last 6 months, but if you stand to one side and think, actually, we've done some really good stuff over the last 5 and 10 years, and we know you have. From a Mersey Maritime point of view, we hear about the great work you're doing all the time. So I'm just wondering if you could share some of the short-term changes, but also the longer-term changes that you've brought in and how that's impacted the teams.
I think probably in the shorter term, and we had it ready to go, but the COVID situation has sort of accelerated one really useful thing, which is to do with communications. There's a thing called the My Navy app, which basically means that sailors can pick up their phone and get messages, and they can also put in data. So we've been able to track whether people have been at home isolating or whether they've actually got picked up the disease and that sort of thing. And we're able to message really clearly. And we've put every week or so, we've been putting messages about mental fitness, whether it's little tips or whether it's just little nudges here and there, just to keep people on side. So I think in the short term, that has been a huge one, and we're going to continue that stuff. But I think more recently, I go back to the fact that we have, and it picks up on a couple of points that have been made already, it is that awareness training. It's making sure that everybody understands and don't get sort of drawn into some of the myths behind mental health, mental fitness, and mental resilience. Actually, and we and me, in a way, we shouldn't beat ourselves up too much that we feel we're falling behind, but actually we're doing not a bad job. So occasionally we like to sort of pat ourselves on the back and be quite positive, because actually we do give people space to do sport, to do fitness, get out away from ships and away from their desks and that sort of thing. So we promote mental fitness. I think that's the big thing, really.
And actually, if we can just stick with you, Simon, that's actually sort of rolled into another question, the link between physical exercise and mental health.
Yeah, well, it's huge, and I'm not a medical man, as I said, but just even if it's going to play a round of golf, even if it's walking, I work on Wirral Island in the northern end of Portsmouth Harbour, and it's quite a nice environment, but there's a path that goes around the island, and actually lots of people just either run around it or walk around it at lunchtime for 15-20 minutes, and it just gets you back in that space. And one of the things that Defence developed, a thing called HeadFit, it's a bit like Headspace, but lots of little videos, and it talks a lot about a bit of green, getting out in nature, mindfulness, that sort of thing is hugely helpful. And of course you can do that in ships. Out there, as long as you can get out onto the upper deck. Have you got 30 seconds? One thing that I'd really like to get across is there's research, and it crosses a few things, but one thing that really impacts on people's mental health is when they're deployed, is if they feel there isn't support for families back home. We're in quite a good position that we can do that, but and we're really improving our support to families back home. But that was brought to the fore right at the beginning of the COVID thing with our deployed people. They were worried because they didn't know what was happening back in the UK.
No, absolutely, and thank you for that. This is, we have enough time, sort of 3 minutes, and this is a sort of open question now, and I'm going to add a bit to it, an open question to the panel. And it's, should you declare your mental health to your employer at a time of an interview? And I'm going to start with, let me think, I'm going to start with Ben, actually. Ben, if we can start with you.
I had a feeling you were going to do that. Not being a lawyer, I don't want to overstate myself, but generally speaking, mental health falls under the Disability Act, and you are not required to make your disability known to a future employer. That being said, there are pros and cons from the employee's perspective as to whether you want to do that, whether it's mental health or any other disability. And I would like to think, possibly naively, that if you are open and honest with your employer, you will be in a position where you get much better support, and your employer is in a much better position to be able to help you, to put things in place that will assist you and make you more productive in your job. Now, that's obviously not always the case, and not all employers are forward thinking in that way. But I would say that it very much depends on the role that you're going for and the company that you're going to work for. But I would like to think that we can move towards a more open and honest culture within the workplace environment.
Fantastic. And Cecilia? Sorry, I can even step in there. We love Wirral Haskening, so of course we know, and we actually mean this. It's JJ. You can blame JJ on your office for a lot of these incredible questions, but yeah, you're a fabulous business, so please continue. But I know there'd be no problems at all there with you.
No, I think I agree with what Ben has said, but I also think that the disclosure, and we come back to sort of what was shouting out at us from the Mentimeter, is that stigma. So I think it's how how the interview panel makes you feel and how comfortable initially you are in your setting as an interviewee to feel the comfort and to know that if you disclose something, it wouldn't be perceived in a negative manner. I also think it probably depends on what type of condition you have and how long you've been a sufferer with that condition. So I think if you've suffered from a mental health condition for a long time and you already have systems in place and coping mechanisms in place, you are more able to feel confident in your disclosure. I think, conversely, if you don't, then you might feel sort of less at ease. And interestingly, this is something that did come out in the mental health network. Part of Diversity of Maritime is sort of how to sort of start those conversations and how difficult it is, depending on the level of how you're affected in your mental health, but also with reference to how you are perceived already in your sort of in the space of the interview. And we at Haskening do have a fabulous team of mental health first aiders. There are policies in place. We have a sort of health and safety policy, and again, as I said initially, that covers the whole well-being. And so I think if you came into our organisation, you'd think that we had things in place that look at the well-being from a sort of 360-degree view. But so whereas I do sort of agree with Ben that you're not legally required to, I really think it's also very personal, coming back to that individual as to your lived experience and maybe past experiences may also hinder how much you disclose or not.
No, thank you so much for that. And Mark, if I may just ask you just to wrap up the question, please, and take us across the line.
And that should be very easy and very quick, because I wouldn't disagree with anything that Ben or Cecilia have said. It is a personal choice. There's no legal obligation, but I think honesty and openness. And would you want to work for someone who didn't respond to that openness and that honesty with empathy and support? I would say probably not. So their answers. I would happily endorse both Ben and Cecilia on that.
Fantastic. Mark, Cecilia, Simon, Ben, thank you so much for your time today. And again, thank you for sharing your insights and your thoughts and just the reaction that we've had. You've clearly struck a note with a lot of people watching. So thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll see you very soon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Right. So now for the sort of middle bit, the MKH project and where we're kind of up to with that. So I know that some of you have been on this journey for 6 years with us. We first launched it at London Shipping Week years and years ago as a sort of early concept. We've had incredible support from our partners, and you'll have seen in the media over the last, well, not just the last month or so, there has been a sort of rumbling that we're almost ready, we're ready. Well, we're ready. We're ready now to use this facility to get it going, to face some of the biggest challenges that we have, to use it to face some of the biggest challenges that we have. Decarbonisation, levelling up, skills, jobs. And the timing could not be more perfect. Not for the best of reasons, but this thing is ready to go. But before we hear from our host today, Richard Maudsley from Wirral Waters, Director of Wirral Waters, let's hear it from one of the biggest ambassadors of this project, Nuz Ghani.
It's surreal launching the Mersey Maritime Knowledge Hub on a pre-record and not being with you in person. I know that the region is going through a particularly challenging time, but this is why this project is so important, because it's going to provide so many opportunities for so many people as soon as we get through and past COVID. It feels like a lifetime ago when I was here with all of you. I remember meeting Pat Hackett, and Lewis, Paul Satur, obviously Chris, and the team from Pill Ports, Property and Land. And we talked about this day, and here we are. It really is a great achievement to be at the launch of the Mersey Maritime Hub. It is going to be so important to so many people, and of course across the country, as we try and ensure that we are at the forefront of all things maritime going forward. Maritime already brings in billions of pounds to the economy, and I think right here in the region supports around 52,000 jobs. And what's important is the opportunities that Mersey Maritime Knowledge Hub is going to create down the road. 4,000 new jobs, for example. It's also going to be the go-to place for skills, for education, for learning, for marine engineering. And what's really exciting, it's going to become a hub for small and medium-sized enterprises as they come up with products and get them to the market to ensure that UK Maritime is at the cutting edge, whether it's on AI or mitigating our impact on the environment. The levelling up agenda has always been key, but more so now when we're dealing with COVID. And it reminds me when we all work together to put together Maritime 2050, our long-term strategy for maritime. Of course, we were focused on technology, investing in people and getting through Brexit. We'd never thought about an impact of a pandemic, which is why a centre of excellence like the Mersey Maritime Knowledge Hub is so important. It ensures that we have a flag in our country, and it establishes it is the go-to place when it comes to knowledge, learning and sharing when it comes to maritime. It's going to create jobs in the area, create opportunities and bring in greater investment as well. Today's also about ensuring that we can reach out to new partners. So whether you're an academic or a business, you need to be involved with us now. Not when we are putting a spade in the ground in the spring or when we are fully opening up in the following year. It'll be too late to come on board. So come on board with the Mersey Maritime team now and be a part of this phenomenal project. Of course, I'm gutted I can't be with you, but I'm delighted to be involved a little bit in your launch today. And I look forward to working with you, with everybody, to ensure that the Mersey Maritime Knowledge Hub remains on the forefront of everyone's minds and we are as competitive as we can be in maritime, down to the work that Chris and the team is doing here. Thank you so much.
Nuz, thank you so much for all your support. I know you're watching this. I've had a number of texts from you asking how it's going, and it's going very well. I think you capture everything perfectly. Today isn't about saying, well, we're launching it, we're doing this. We're actually superstitious, so we don't use the word launch. But it is about saying, okay, well, we're open for business now. Who wants to be on this journey? We have loads of fabulous partners who have committed. We're on this journey with you, but who else? We're ready to go. But before we actually look more into what the Maritime Knowledge Hub is, and Richard gives a fabulous presentation, let's just remind ourselves what this big, hairy, job-creating, decarbonisation beast is. Thank you so much, and I hope that sort of jogs the memory. This is great. We're actually getting texts in of people that are saying, right, it's on, we want to commit to it. And you know, two of you who you are, so I'll be giving you a call tomorrow, so you can come down and visit. We're going to make this thing happen. So without further ado, and our partner in crime, I suppose it's you, Alan Evans, myself, who came up with this concept 6 years ago. Richard Maudsley, Director of Wirral Waters, did you think we'd ever be here standing on stage saying we're open for business, we're starting we're firing the starting gun, we're away?
I can't quite believe it's been 6 years since we stood outside that building, Chris. So
we look exactly the same.
That's true, actually. We haven't aged a bit.
So Richard, please, over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Chris. So thanks, everybody. My name is Richard Maudsley. I'm Development Director at Peel L&P, with the property and regeneration arm of the Peel Group. And I'm going to talk to you today about the what, where and when of the MKH, and importantly, the how. How do organisations get involved with this transformational project? So what is it in a nutshell? It's a £23 million industry-led maritime innovation hub on the left bank of the River Mersey, one of the largest coastal communities in the UK. And it's designed to promote collaboration by clustering industry, SMEs, startups, R&D and academia under one roof. So it's a nationally significant centre of excellence supported by government. And you will have heard earlier today the eloquent comments from both the Maritime Minister and also from Nuz Ghani, who we met on site earlier this year. So we thank governments for their ongoing support to this project. And the project seeks to drive knowledge creation, skills and innovation, and it will contribute to both the levelling up and decarbonisation agendas. Other maritime nations have a similar facility, but the UK doesn't. So this is genuinely unique within the UK. So what will it do? Well, it forms part of the business ecosystem in the Liverpool City region, which includes assets such as the Materials Innovation Factory, SciTech Daresbury, the Knowledge Quarter, and the MTC. These nationally significant assets are driving growth in the city region, and the MKH forms part of this network. And we've done our research. It does show that MKH is needed, and it can help to generate thousands of new jobs. And as Chris Shirling-Rook often reminds me, maritime isn't just about ships. There are over 30 subsectors in marine and maritime. Offshore energy to blue biotech, defence to legal and professional services, leisure to marine construction, including tidal. And the MKH seeks to play a role with promoting all of these subsectors. So where is it? Well, it's located in Wirral Waters, and Wirral Waters is one of the largest regeneration projects in the UK, seeking to revitalise over 300 acres of water and land on the left bank of the River Mersey. It's a project that's place-led, so we need to get the place right, but it's jobs-driven. We need to grow, diversify and fix the economy, and that's really where the MKH fits in. But it's a project with people at its heart. We've got governments, local, regional and central. They're all full square behind the project. It's got enterprise zone status, housing zone status, and together, between the private and public sector, we're starting to make it happen. And Wirral Waters has started, with delivery taking place in housing, with commercial and industrial uses, and all the supporting infrastructure that underpins a project of this scale. So what we've done, we've broken down Wirral Waters into a series of different neighbourhood areas, and the first new neighbourhood area to start to take shape is Four Bridges, and this is really the home for the Maritime Knowledge Hub. So Four Bridges is a new low-carbon neighbourhood that you can see here in the image, and it's already taking shape. So we've got a couple of buildings which are out of the ground, including the Wirral Met College construction faculty, which is designed to create the construction workforce of the future. And this is next door to the MKH. Number 1 Tower Road South office, 2 doors down from the MKH, is now on site. This will be finished in December of next year. Highly sustainable, BREEAM Excellence office space. We've got Edgerton Village, which is an amenity and arts hub, which starts next year. And then in the foreground there, you can see this new streetscape, which again is on site as we speak, where we're looking to provide a shared surface, prioritise pedestrians and cyclists, and improve the environment in this location. So it is happening, and Maritime Knowledge Hub will have neighbours. In terms of the building, it's focused in on the hydraulic tower, this Grade 2 listed building. an architectural beacon for the area designed by dock engineer Jesse Hartley. He was responsible for a lot of Liverpool's maritime structures. It was a copy of the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. It was completed in the 1860s. A building and a location with amazing views across to Liverpool's iconic and world-class waterfront. So we and partners are bringing this building back to life, repurposing it as a Maritime Knowledge Hub, and that'll be a symbol of renaissance for the left bank of the River Mersey. So, in terms of the original concept was to restore the original building, create a new build extension next door, provide access to the water for training opportunities, and to maximise those views across to Liverpool. Inside it, we're creating accommodation for about 60,000 square feet of collaborative, multi-user space that can facilitate all sorts of uses, whether or not it's space for Tier 1 and Tier 2 supply chain organisations and engineers, whether or not it's front of house for professional services, engineering R&D space, business incubation and accelerator for startups, perhaps offshore survival training, maritime tech centre, hydrolabs, marine simulation, all of these things can be accommodated within this building. Essentially, we're creating flexible space that can fit occupiers' specific needs. This is a cross-section which shows the 4-storey building to the right-hand side. That's sort of 75% of the project. That's where a lot of the heavy lifting goes, with the entrance, reception, the offices, and the incubator space on the left-hand side in the converted hydraulic tower. In terms of floor plans, the ground floor used for labs, R&D and workshop type space, with the upper floors then for front of house, for office accommodation, conferencing, learning and training. But the space can flex to people's requirements. We've also obviously got the supporting amenity that's going to be required for this place to be a success. Cafe and bistro, and we're looking to bring the old and the new together in one harmonious hub. Sustainability, right at the heart of this project. How we generate power, how we manage the waste, how we get people around, the use of materiality, the use of smart technologies within the building. It's a project that naturally delivers green and inclusive growth. So a lot of work has been going on behind the scenes over a number of years, including an architectural competition, a lot of design work, delivery modelling, funding structures, partnership arrangements, all of this stuff. And this image is what we're aiming for, this is what we're heading for, a fitting tribute, we think, to Jesse Hartley. So today, and we can't use the word launch, I don't think, Chris. Today is the starting pistol, really, in us curating that right occupational mix, the right occupational partners for this project. We're already in detailed dialogue with a number of parties, a wide range of organisations who already want to be part of the MKH. But we're calling today to other organisations to come and speak to us and to get involved. Speak to Mersey Maritime, speak to the council, speak to the Peel team directly, and we can work with you. In terms of timescales, we're looking to cement the right occupational mix over the next couple of months. That will be followed by a detailed planning application, and subject to SIF funding landing, we've targeted a start on site date sometime in summer 2021. And delivery, well, is through true partnership between different organisations. Mersey Maritime, Wirral Council, the Combined Authority, and Peel ourselves. And for our part, Peel L&P, we've got a good track record in delivering major scale projects, including the likes of Media City, Salford Quays, Glasgow Waters, Liverpool Waters, Chatham Waters, a lot of projects near the water. So please come and talk to us sooner rather than later and be part of this transformational project. Plenty of information on the website, plus we have an e-brochure which I think we can get out to the attendees of this conference. So thank you all very much for listening. Have a great conference. I think we've got, I think we are taking questions, and then we've got a number of videos and vox pops from some of our partners and supporters. Thank you very much.
My name is Alan Evans. I'm the Director of Regeneration and Place at Wirral Council. Wirral Council is a key partner in the Maritime Knowledge Hub, and we've been working with Mersey Maritime right from the outset in terms of design, concept, so it really is great now to be seeing this project move into a crucial delivery phase. Wirral Council is currently undertaking a number of regeneration programmes across our borough, working with Peel Holdings at Wirral Waters, working with our joint venture partner Muse in Birkenhead Town Centre, across what we are calling the Left Bank Regeneration Programme, a truly transformational series of projects which will take our borough forward now. Maritime Knowledge Hub is at the heart of that. It's a programme of national significance, and the Maritime Knowledge Hub epitomises the economic growth credentials of the area, as well as the heritage and bringing together skills infrastructure in a way that drives our economy forward, not just for Wirral, but for the city region and for the wider North West region.
My name is Harry Joe, and I'm the chair of Maritime UK. Maritime UK has been a great supporter of the Maritime Knowledge Hub project on the Wirral, and we very much hope that it will prove to be the foundation for the establishment of a network of such knowledge hubs around the UK. Two of the greatest challenges that the maritime industries currently face are the environment and the need to decarbonise, and the advent of new and disruptive technologies. I have no doubt that the Maritime Knowledge Hub will be at the heart of the efforts to meet and overcome these and other challenges. I wish the Maritime Knowledge Hub and all those involved with it every success.
Hello, I'm Clive Hickman, Chief Executive at the Manufacturing Technology Centre. I just want to say a few words about the Maritime Knowledge Hub because it's really important for our region. It provides advanced manufacturing opportunities which support the Levelling Up agenda and has the potential to create 52,000 jobs in the Liverpool City region. MTC fully supports this initiative. What a fantastic opportunity for all of us. Thank you and keep safe.
Good afternoon. I'm Richard Burnett, the Chief Exec of the Road Haulage Association. Our relationship with Mersey Maritime has grown over recent years, and we're delighted to support the Maritime Knowledge Hub. As an island and a maritime nation, we need to recognise the importance of shipping, but not only that, how the overall supply chain integrates. And that's why it's so important to encourage these collaborative relationships, like the one between the RHA and Mersey Maritime. In fact, our commitment is so strong, the RHA is moving into Tower Quay at Birkenhead very soon. So keep your eyes peeled for press updates next week to find out more. So there you have it, the RHA and Mersey Maritime in collaboration, supporting the Maritime Knowledge Hub.
I'm Professor Andy Plater. I'm a coastal researcher at the University of Liverpool. We're involved in the Maritime Knowledge Hub through an ERDF-funded business accelerator project, the Port City Innovation Hub, that aligns the research expertise of the universities with the innovation needs of SMEs in the maritime sector. For us, the Maritime Knowledge Hub is important as it brings together business, academia and government in one place to address key challenges and opportunities, especially decarbonisation and the use of data and sensors in the development of smart ports.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Mark Dickinson. I'm General Secretary of Nautilus International, which is the union and professional organisation in the UK and the Netherlands and Switzerland for maritime professionals. The Maritime Knowledge Hub project is really important for us and really important to me because I come from the Wirral and our spiritual home as Nautilus is on Merseyside at Mariners Park in Wallasey, and this project speaks to us strongly because it's about an industry that's really crucial to our local and our national economies. It's about jobs, it's about regeneration, it's about resilience, and it's about our heritage as a maritime community on Merseyside. It's an amazing opportunity for the amazing people of Merseyside and of course beyond. So what's not to like about it? It's a terrific project. We all need to get behind and support. Nautilus is on board. I hope you are too. Thank you.
I'm Mike Kane, I'm the Shadow Maritime Minister. I'm delighted to be here today with Maritime UK, celebrating Maritime Week. It's a world-class, world-beating industry. I'm here at the heart of London at Canary Wharf, with the Pelican of London looking at this particular project, but discussing the wider hub project that's going to generate at least 4,000 jobs and billions worth of capacity in the maritime industry. It's a great career on many levels, on many fronts, in many disciplines, and I encourage all young people to think about their futures and how they can get involved with maritime and develop their life chances and livelihoods in the future.
Hello, my name is Ben Murray. I'm the Director of Maritime UK. Maritime UK's role, and my role in particular with the Knowledge Hub, has been to try and help it along its way to raise the profile of the project with government and with other audiences. And I think it's a really important project, not just for this region, but for the country as a whole. It's going to be the sort of place where people come together to collaborate, and we know collaboration is critical to our success and the future of our sector. And it's something that we want to see how it works here, learn from that, and roll it out across the rest of the country with a network of innovation hubs. So huge congratulations to those Mersey Maritime, Wirral City Region, Peel, Wirral Waters, the list goes on, for playing your role in getting the project to this stage, and we look forward to seeing those shovels in the ground. Well done.
Thank you for that, Ben, and you're also here as well, and it's really interesting because you're wearing the same jumper, so that's really good for continuity, continuous, something, I don't know. So thank you everybody so much for the questions you've sent in, and again, I'm quite mischievous, so I love the trickiness of all these things. So Richard, if I may, I'm just going to get straight involved. Richard, 6 years, why has it taken so long?
Well, I can't quite believe it has been 6 years, but if you tell me it has, it has. But I do remember very, very vividly standing outside that building, and remember Chris talking about what the industry needs back then, talking about that it needs to be an industry-led hub for collaboration, and you were saying that it needs to be here, in this region, in this coastal community place. So I was probably a little bit sceptical at the time.
That's an understatement.
To be fair, but I didn't know Chris very well at that moment in time. But you know, it's proven to be absolutely right. And sort of these clusters, these hubs, are very, very important in terms of driving the economy of not only our region but other regions in the area. So why has it taken so long? Well, we've been doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes, as I mentioned in my talk. We've been doing a lot of work in terms of the infrastructure around Wirral Waters, so this isn't some kind of sort of isolated, dislocated project. It needs to sort of fit in with the other placemaking agendas that we've got there. But also we've got a lot of partners, and a lot of partners coming from different disparate areas: academia, the private sector, the public sector, the tech sector, the maritime sector, all of these different people speaking in very, very different languages. So there's been a sort of a language issue which we've got to sort of nurture through. But the great thing is we are here today, positive about the future, moving on to the next steps, which is about securing the occupiers for this project.
So I was just going to say, for some of my board will be watching this, so you know this has been a conversation at the Mersey Maritime board level for 10, 15 years. So Ian Higby, if you're watching, do you remember we used to talk about the University of the Sea, to have this centralised centre of excellence with academia, industry, government all in one place? So this is actually, I can't claim the idea is all mine, although I probably will do in about 20 seconds, but you know, this has come from the industry for more than a decade. So again, we're delighted that we are moving finally in the right direction.
And I think the beauty of this project is because you've got so many partners involved with it, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And that's what it is. It isn't a property project. What we're looking at is the outputs for this to drive the economy in the Liverpool City region forward.
Okay, so if I'm going to get another question now, ooh, right, I'm going to start with, okay, let's have another one. How will COVID impact, let me have a look. How will COVID impact the build, £23 million? Do we still need offices?
Okay. Well, obviously, pertinent question, given what's been going on in the city region over the last sort of 24, 48 hours. So thoughts, obviously, with everybody who's affected by COVID at the moment and the hospitals filling up in the city region. In terms of the wider impact on Maritime Knowledge Hub, what we've done is assessed all of our projects in the light of a sort of a post-COVID world or in light of a world where we have to live with COVID. And I think Wirral Waters and Maritime Knowledge Hub stand up to scrutiny pretty well. So most organisations that we know have adopted some degree of agile working over the last sort of 6 to 7 months. That is set to continue, and that obviously has an impact on space needs and space requirements from organisations. So, you know, in our experience, what they're looking for is less space, but better quality space, higher performing space, and more agile and adaptable space. And all of those things are built into the Maritime Knowledge Hub. So we incorporated that into the designs prior to sort of COVID coming forward. So I think in terms of what we've got spatially, it does work. In terms of other impacts of COVID, so we've got things like, you know, investors, has had an impact on investors, but not in this particular case. And then there's supply chain for construction as well. But at the moment, all of our construction activity is carrying on at pace, so we don't think it's going to impact on the delivery of Maritime Knowledge Hub.
And I would just add to that, one of the key ingredients in this is the ecosystem is for it to be industry-led. So we know that our members are saying to us, actually, yeah, we probably are going to downgrade our offices. Do we need to have hundreds of or thousands of square foot offices when we can just have specific teams in areas? And being together, we only have 60,000 square foot at the Maritime Knowledge Hub. It's not a big skyscraper. So we know that we're going to have the right blend of people really energised in that ecosystem. And of course, it's also about having government, central and local involved there, and academia. So it's getting the right ingredients in the right place at the right time. And I agree with you, Richard. I think this does stand up to scrutiny. This actually is what we sort of always wanted. Okay, so I have another question here. Okay, MKH is a fantastic project. Well done, Richard. What is the scale of the ambition, and are you competing with Southampton and London, or Rotterdam, or Singapore, or Shanghai? I can answer this one. All of them.
Over to you.
Absolutely all of them. We have the space, we have the technology, we have the brains, we have the ambition, we have the energy, we have the space, we have the partners. It's all right, Ben. I won't ask you about this as our Maritime UK representative. But yeah, I think it is okay for us to have a bit of ambition. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, and the time is right. We're thinking about global Britain. We're thinking about the big challenges that we have before us: decarbonisation, creating more jobs, more skills. We know we need these in the Northwest. I'm a Birkenhead boy myself. I've seen the challenges there. So yeah, there's hunger and ambition to deliver this project on a scale that we haven't even dreamt about yet. We're seeing as the MKH is just an accelerator. It'll start and it'll grow and it'll grow and it'll grow. And I do suspect that over the coming months, that there'll be some other additions. It's no accident that Richard Burnett from the Road Haulage Association, although he announced that they are partnering up and moving to Wirral Waters. This is this cluster effect already. We're having the key partners starting to come in, and it forms a sort of gravity. So yeah, it's going to be big. It'll outlive me. It won't outlive you, Richard, obviously, being only 28. Sorry. So where does it compare to Singapore and London?
So I think when we've looked at this project and the ingredients of this project, it doesn't exist anywhere in the UK. That's first and foremost. We know that. There are elements of it, but it doesn't exist in the same form as what we're putting forward here. So that point about it being industry-led is absolutely critical to the success of this project. There are other projects overseas in different maritime nations, but none of them fully reflect what we're looking to do in this location here. So.
And this is we have time for just one more question very quickly. What have been your greatest barriers?
Greatest barriers, I think it's been about getting all the partners to speak in the same language. So we're all sort of moving forward together to deliver this project. And as I say, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and that's because we've got these disparate partners, all wanting the same things, but all speaking in a different language. So I think that's probably been the greatest barrier here.
Fantastic. There's just some other questions here very quickly, and they're all quite similar. We're a local training provider on the Wirral. We'd love to be involved. We'd love to hear from you. How do we be part of the hub? Yet again, will there be office space available for SMEs? Yeah, absolutely. SMEs, micro businesses. You're the businesses we're looking for, the innovative ones, the fleet of foot, the businesses who think outside the box and need that acceleration, need that support from tier 1 companies and government and academia to really support you to be all you can be. There's another quick question. Do we have time? I'm looking at John. Have we got 30 seconds? Okay. Quick 30 seconds. Thank you, John. How do I get involved in the building of the hub?
Okay, well, it's really important that both in terms of local supply chains, but also supply chains through Mersey Maritime. So I think I'm due to do a face-to-face at Mersey Maritime early part of
2nd of November.
So I think we can talk about the potential supply chain opportunities there. We'll want to utilise Mersey Maritime members and also the local supply chain. So yeah, very keen to engage.
Fantastic. Richard, thank you so much for today. I didn't think we'd make it. I didn't think we'd make it, but no, I think we are there now. So
Great.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your support.
Okay, nice to see you. Thank you. Have a good rest of the conference.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this now brings us stealthily, and how are we doing for time? We're okay, just, are we? For our final panel, which is based on tech and innovation. And we've covered a fabulous subject earlier. We have the energy of announcing the planned Maritime Knowledge Hub. We can't call it launch because we're superstitious, but we are open for business. And when we think about tech and innovation, we think about the opportunities that we have as an industry, which is worth, £46 billion a year to the UK Exchequer, employs more than 1.1 million people. In our region, it drives in over £4 billion just for the Liverpool City region and supports more than 52,000 jobs. And when we think about tech and innovation, this is something which is really close to my heart. I love the idea and the growth that our industry can have. We think about smart ports, we think about smart shipping, we think about digitisation, we think about advanced manufacturing. And these are all opportunities for our industry to grow and to move into, especially with global Britain. So on this, let's hear quickly from our members about what they've been up to with their tech and innovation.
My name is Dr. Charlie Whitford, Associate Director at the MTC. Obviously, we're an organisation set up to help businesses with the adoption of technology and innovation. However, I would like to talk about how we're continuing to adopt new technologies within. This new world we're all in has given us the opportunity to comprehensively embrace hybrid digital and physical working environments. With the adoption of various digital tools, we are more effectively than ever able to rapidly mobilise teams of internal and external colleagues to solve some of the most complex and challenging problems we have faced today, such as the ventilator challenge, net zero and levelling up.
Hello, I'm Colin Lavelle, Legal Director at Hill Dickinson LLP. The key technological challenges we have faced at this time are due to the majority of colleagues now working from home. We have addressed this by accelerating the deployment of integrated mobile-enabled software solutions across all office locations around the globe, so enhancing collaborative and agile working anywhere, anytime. Running large-scale and well-supported online events for clients and colleagues, offering financial contributions for home working equipment and technology, and sharing regular video updates from senior management. Our customer advisory group is made up of representatives from all business groups, which drives and implements innovation. We also provide opportunities for colleagues to share ideas via multi-way communications that include online suggestion boxes and firm-wide surveys, acting on suggestions wherever possible. Thank you very much.
Western Union is often referred to as the oldest fintech in town. Not surprising, as it's 170 years old, and during that time we've helped individuals and organisations move money around the globe. We cover 200 countries and territories and 130 currencies, and that global reach has enabled us to help the maritime industry, underpinning major deals and facilitating the movement of goods and services around the world. More specifically, our payroll solutions have enabled companies to pay their employees, even those on offshore platforms in multiple jurisdictions.
I'm Nick Bishop from the Virtual Training Centre, and we're delivering market-leading e-learning security training with a current focus on the maritime and port sector. We're a UK Department for Transport MCA approved provider offering 100% online STCW ISPS training, having delivered our courses into 116 countries to date. We're customer focused, providing high quality online courses, delivering the most current and up-to-date innovations, including the collation of useful data analytics.
I'm Kevin Smith, I'm the founder of Maritime Digital Hub. Maritime Digital Hub is a not-for-profit organisation that's focused on simplifying digital transformation and educating the maritime sector and the technology sector in how we can all work together and coexist. During this crisis, we've turned to our network of partners from both sides, including those maritime and technology partners, to assist us to build a position where we can survive and come out stronger together.
Hi, I'm Carl Whittle, Professor of Zero Carbon and Nuclear Energy at the University of Liverpool. My interests focus on how the UK can meet its goal of net zero carbon by 2050 through the use of low or ideally zero carbon technologies. For example, transportation moving to zero carbon emitting fuels such as hydrogen. In shipping, this could be in the short term focusing on port-side operation, whilst linking with how to make large-scale shipping zero carbon in the longer term. At the university, we have skills and capabilities in systems modelling and how changes can be tested within a virtual environment before they're implemented in real life.
And thank you for all of that great feedback from our members. And there's, again, I'm always in awe of the brain boxes that give us these insights into what's happening and what's possible. Just before we move on to our sort of opening speaker, Sarah Kenny, the Chief Exec of BMT and the Vice Chair of Maritime UK, I just want to remind everyone that, again, it's fully interactive. Ask your questions, send them in, give us your thoughts. And this is one of the panels that as I keep talking about, it's close to my heart because I can see the potential, certainly for our region, but also for industry and the UK. So just to remind you, it's at menti.com, 755-8290. Ask any questions you like. We like tricky ones, as you've noticed. It's that sort of, there's no point in having a conference if everything is structured. So please ask us those out the box questions. So now we're going to hear from our keynote speaker, Sarah Kenny, who I suspect is also going to ask some interesting questions of our panel.
Hi, I'm Sarah Kenny, the Vice Chair of Maritime UK and the CEO of BMT Group. I would like to thank Mersey Maritime for running with this important Maritime Exchange event today and for asking me to speak at the Technology and Innovation panel to kick things off. Before I start, I wish you and your families well during these uncertain times. Reflecting on the theme of this panel session today, I have to say that the experience of the past 6 months of how we as a collective of government, industrialists, academics, media and society have responded to the global pandemic has caused me to stop and rethink about the technology and innovation agenda overall, about the sheer number of technologies that are emerging right now, but also the pace at which technological change and disruption is accelerating. The very rapid adoption of virtual working technologies over the past few months has brought about a profound change to the way we work, which in my view has become largely embedded now in what we could now view as an established way of working, evidenced perhaps by the still low number of workers returning to city offices across the UK. Not only does this demonstrate the potential for rapid introduction and adoption of technology, but also just how quickly technology can be fully integrated into the way we work. So reflecting on today's theme, I propose that for all the worrying effects and the ongoing impacts of the global pandemic, perhaps one of the most positive outcomes in a post-COVID world will be the lessons we've learned and around just how quickly we can change, hopefully going forwards, not just to respond to events, but to anticipate and be resilient to them. If I can see something beneficial coming from the pandemic, it is that it has set the pace of change for this coming third decade of the 21st century, not just in technology introduction and adoption, but also in new and more agile collaborative business models and in more innovative and inclusive ways of working. As innovators and technologists in the marine and maritime sector, then, we should capitalise on this, and we must now think to the future. We should actively reflect, review and learn from how we have adapted to the changes that we have experienced over the past few months. Learn from how other sectors, such as automotive, have adapted and innovated during this time, and look at how, for example, organisations with very different backgrounds have come together to design, develop, acquire and rapidly deploy solutions, often breaking apart long-established practices in so doing. To illustrate just what is possible, a great example is the COVID ventilators, where technology, innovation and a compelling will to collaborate enabled the acceleration of product development from years to weeks, developing and maturing not just the product, but also the supporting supply chain, commercial, legal and regulatory aspects. A fantastic effort. The marine and maritime sector, as many others, was already facing a period of profound change prior to the COVID outbreak. We are arguably now seeing an acceleration of that change, with new and rapidly changing geopolitical imperatives, nationalistic and populist political agendas, and refocusing of investments. We're also seeing the impact of rapidly emerging technologies, especially in the digital domain, the changing nature of trade and trade relationships between and inside nations, significant changes to established supply chains, and a clear emergence of demographic and societal changes as we adjust, all of us, to this new normal, which is driving demand for new ways of working and developing new business models. New disruptive technologies are being developed rapidly and have the potential to radically disrupt the established norms of our marine and maritime sector. Much of the innovation behind these technologies is actually driven by global demand in consumer markets, especially consumer electronics, where investment in research and development eclipses that which our maritime sector has traditionally committed. I will mention a few key technologies that could transform the sector later, but the list is far too long to cover them all here, and I am sure you're going to hear plenty about them from the experts in this panel session. I will instead focus on the challenge of accelerating technology change, coupled with new agile and collaborative initiatives and business models, which is creating both new space in established markets and new ways of doing business. This convergence, making disruptive innovations and technology a business reality, has the ability to destabilise the long-established norms and structures of our sector. In saying this, we need to consider some of the wider implications too of advanced technology. It is really easy to be seduced by what the technology has to offer, and therefore really easy also to overlook the wider aspects that could lead to unexpected consequences for our enterprise. There is no doubt that technology will transform our sector, but instead of taking a purely technology-led view, we must be prepared for innovation across all aspects of our business too. Otherwise, technology will never be fully integrated and the benefits therefore never fully realised. For example, I suggest that there is an opportunity to gain a strategic edge through the smart and well-considered integration of people and technology, delivering role augmentation and human systems partnerships, modernising our traditional organisational structures and some fundamental elements of our organisations. So as a sector then, we need to innovate in the way in which we design and develop solutions, making use of emerging technologies which can aid collaboration and accelerate product development, and adopt different approaches to manufacturing, supply chain and integration to accelerate the exploitation of technology, driving efficiency and productivity into our sector. We also need, of course, to reduce our costs, attract and retain a skilled workforce for the future, and meet our environmental commitments, ensuring at the same time that safety and regulatory aspects are addressed all along the way. So how as an enterprise do we deliver against this future? To make it all work for our benefit and to realise the technological opportunities ahead of us, we must build a culture of collaboration within the sector and across the sector, one that does not necessarily have a strong, long tradition of such. And whilst we've made a lot of progress in this area, there is still much more to do. As an example of really great progress, I'll cite the collaboration by industry and academia, supported by UK government, to establish a maritime research and innovation hub, MARI UK. MARI UK is an open consortium aimed at getting substantial funds for the UK maritime sector overall, by demonstrating government, industry and academic willingness to cooperate and, importantly, to co-invest. This provides an opportunity for much needed technical collaboration and synergy nationwide to meet the emerging challenges and opportunities in the marine and maritime sector. Since the official launch of MARI UK, the team have successfully commissioned R&D projects with over 20 UK-wide organisations, focusing on innovative ways to develop technology to assist the UK's transition to a future zero-emission shipping and towards technological innovations that can demonstrate improvements to UK maritime services and operations overall. Research now underway includes the themes of autonomy and robotics, novel power and propulsion systems, novel fuels, energy efficient fuels, energy efficient vessels, energy storage, smart navigation and maritime cyber risk mitigation. Furthermore, as part of the UK government's integrated review, MARI UK have just submitted a bid to transform the UK's freight distribution network by minimising our reliance on land-based haulage to a new vision of a UK coastal highway through safe, zero-carbon, short-sea autonomous, eventually, shipping. This will drive economic prosperity and support regional development across the UK, in particular in coastal areas, for a partnership investment of £530 million over 10 years, ultimately aiming to move 25% of the UK's land haulage tonnage by kilometre via a zero-carbon autonomous fleet of coastal vessels. The aim is to create a zero-carbon transportation system, reducing greatly road congestion, that is also commercially viable, leading to greater UK prosperity and potential for exports. It includes work on advanced manufacturing in shipbuilding, port automation, digital connectivity and smart and autonomous ships. This tells me that as a sector we already recognise that we cannot stand still, which is great news, but as I have highlighted above, the technology side of innovation is only one small part of the picture. And as technology-driven disruption impacts our sector, we are faced with the reality of maintaining productive, continuous, safe, efficient marine and maritime operations as part of a truly global industry where others may not adopt at pace or indeed at all. So summarising what this could mean for us, rapid technological advancement will require us to constantly adapt to ensure technologies are developed, deployed and used effectively. As a result, we will need to be more agile and adaptable to support the safe exploitation of technologies as they emerge and also as they disappear. The convergence of technologies across and between sectors will necessitate a far more collaborative, interdisciplinary approach, challenging our traditional silos and requiring us to be more innovative and creative in developing solutions and looking for ideas from other sectors. A changing workforce with greater digital skills, comfortable in a multidisciplinary environment and drawn from a far broader, wider demographic with complex and diverse notions of culture, identity and loyalty, and expectations of meaningful, purposeful work will drive the need for us all to be far more flexible as employers. And anticipating change to the way that humans and systems work together in the future, we're going to need to address both elements together in future designs and solutions. Finally, we will have to come to terms with the value and use of the totality of an unprecedented volume of data. As we go forwards, decisions that we make under pressure, particularly in our environment, will be analysed calmly with hindsight by others. Today's information will be there forever and may well be assessed in a future that has very different value systems. Recent air accident investigations are a key case in point. We will need to have this issue at the front of our minds. So as I draw to a close, this leads me to a number of questions which I pose to the panel and also to you as the audience. And they are, how should the sector view innovation and technology in creating the workforce of the future? How does the sector stay ahead of our competitors who may well come from other sectors, offering technology-led innovations which challenge our traditional ways of working? What enabling systems, tools, policies, processes and culture are essential or need to change in order to support and enable an environment where new ideas and technologies can be fully exploited? How does the maritime sector become more agile and data-driven, and how will we use data to our advantage? And finally, how fast can we go, and how fast should we go? Ladies and gentlemen, the future is incredibly exciting, and as I am sure you will hear from the panel today, across the marine and maritime sector, we are already working on research and innovation projects that are at the forefront of change, envisaging and developing new ideas and solutions in a complex technological environment. The potential opportunities and rewards that this work offers are vast, but we must start preparing our sector to receive and integrate them now. In closing today, I'll add that Darwin said, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent. It is the one that is the most adaptable to change." So as I close the technology and innovation keynote and get ready to hand over to the panel, what a great theme to go out on. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time and your attention. I hope you enjoy the panel session today. You've got some great speakers. Enjoy, get thinking and enjoy the conference. Thank you very much.
Sarah, thank you so much for that. And again, it's always quite inspirational whenever we hear you speak. I love the Darwin quote at the end. So I hope everyone out there heard the questions Sarah asked. I also hope our panel have heard those questions. Caroline, I'm glad I don't have to put these together. These are far too high level for me. Caroline, lovely to see you again, as always. Thank you so much for chairing today. Good luck.
Pleasure.
I'm going to hand you the floor.
Thanks, Chris. I'd like to join Sarah first in welcoming you all to the Technology and Innovation panel discussion. Thank you for joining us. I'm sure it's going to be a really, really interesting session. My name is Caroline Price and I head up the Green Ports team within the Smart Ports division for Royal Haskoning DHV. I've been working in the maritime sector now for about 14 years, primarily with ports and harbours in the commercial sector, but also with the recreational sector across the globe. Much of my career has been spent supporting clients with infrastructure projects, drawing on my scientific background in both marine biology and oceanography, to try and help them understand how to deliver operationally successful outcomes whilst minimising their impact on a sensitive marine environment. I've also spent a chunk of my time developing maritime policy, both at the UK and the EU level, but also internationally with organisations like PIANC and the IMO, helping to sort of translate regulation into guidance that can help people in the sector really implement things at a practical level. In my role as Green Ports Director, I head up a global team of experts to champion the delivery of sustainable infrastructure solutions for ports and harbours, and also to help them develop strategies to meet the challenges of transitioning to more sustainable operations. Technology really does have a key role to play in driving these changes and is an important tool in the wider sense to facilitate change. Before I introduce you to my colleagues on the panel, I'd like to just remind you about how we're capturing audience input today. And we're going to be using a tool called Mentimeter. This is an online tool for those of you who haven't been involved in the earlier sections of the conference. And we can use it for people to respond to questions or put forward questions for the panel that we can pick up later. To access this, you just need to go to www.menti.com and pop in the code 7558. And hopefully you can see a link that you can perhaps click on as well on your screen directly. If you log into it now, then you'll be able to see, for example, that we've posed a question that we'd really like you all to answer, which is about what are the biggest opportunities for technology and innovation in the maritime industry now? And as people kind of feed in their input to these questions, then it will contribute to a word cloud, which will kind of pick up, and as words get used more frequently, those words within the cloud will get larger, and those which come up less frequently will get a little bit smaller. So the thing to bear in mind as you're populating the answer to this question is to try and keep your answers to maybe 1 or 2 words, or potentially, you know, a buzzword phrase that can be recognized across the sector, and that will hopefully help us have a word cloud that makes sense to everybody. And then we'll use this, as I say, to kind of build it through or work it through to the questions that we discuss within the panel. So without further ado then, just picking up finally on a few points from Sarah's keynote, I just wanted to particularly champion or add my voice to Sarah's point with respect to the importance of people and processes alongside technology to really maximise the benefits of introducing new innovations. The maritime sector has a long history of adapting to change, and as well as collaborating with and learning from other sectors. The panel particularly brings a wealth of experience from other sectors outside maritime, and in their introductions, I'd like to ask them please to share their thoughts on this, connected to this as well, and any particular examples of projects or research that might be ongoing or that has completed in the recent past that really offers opportunities to the maritime sector in helping to push forward change. So if I can start by passing over to Clive Hickman, please.
Hello, everybody. I'm Clive Hickman. I'm the Chief Executive of the Manufacturing Technology Centre. I'm an automotive engineer by training, but my career has taken me across many different sectors and also into maritime. I'm a non-executive director of Mersey Maritime, so hello to everybody from the maritime sector. In terms of my business today, MTC, it's all about manufacturing process development and how we can take manufacturing processes to improve products for the future. And one of the things that we've found over the last 10 years since we set up the company is that those manufacturing processes, whatever they are just as relevant to automotive or aerospace or marine or food and drink, whatever sector we go to. So it's all about, for me, manufacturing process development. I think the 3 key areas that I'm focusing on these days are net zero, adopting advanced manufacturing technologies to improve productivity, but coupling with that, upskilling people so that when they get displaced from their job that they did traditionally, they can be absorbed back into the business in a higher skilled, better paid job for the future. Caroline, you asked about significant projects that we're working on at the minute. We have a fairly big project that's ongoing in the Liverpool City region right now. We have a team of about 30 people who are based in Liverpool, and that's expected to grow to a couple of hundred people over the next 2 years. And that project is looking at how do we take digital manufacturing and use digital manufacturing to assist physical manufacturing. And so we create things that are called digital twins that emulates the production process. You simulate the process before you adopt the process physically. That means you can do all of the work offline and very quickly transition that into practice in a production environment. And I'll talk more about that when we get onto some of the questions, I guess. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Clive. Perhaps now if I could ask Mark.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mark Gillen, and I joined Artemis Technologies only last Monday, so very new in post. And I am the Programme Director for the Belfast Maritime Consortium's UKRI Strengthen Places project, which is just kicked off last month, which is focusing on decarbonisation of maritime transportation. My background is originally as an aerospace engineer, but I spent many a year in Formula One as chief race engineer for a number of teams and chief aerodynamicist as well. And more recently, I was Chief Technology Officer for Innovate UK. looking after the strategy and impact directorate, and also the centres and networks governance, which includes the Catapult network and the KTN. I guess in terms of program that is linked into this, I think the Formula One and their knowledge on energy recovery systems is second to none in terms of developing ultra high power density motor generator units. And certainly over the last couple of years in discussion with Artemis and linking in to their America's Cup technologies and their expertise in hydrofoiling, we created effectively a world's first, which is a fully submerged e-foiler unit, which combines this ultra high power density motor generator unit with the gearbox and propeller in a hydrofoil. And that effectively brings the vessel out of the water, significantly reduces the drag on the vessel, and then allows the range of the electric drive and the battery energy storage system, or alternatively, potentially hydrogen fuel cells, to have not just a very fast vessel, but a vessel that is very comfortable and has zero wake and has a significant range too, because you've effectively reduced the drag too. So I think the combination of skills of Formula One with America's Cup technology, working in collaboration with, in our case, in the Belfast Maritime Consortium, Bombardier, the universities, local SMEs who are experts in composite engineering, and the college as well, just in terms of the upskilling to provide us a cohort of future staff, it has been really transformative. So this gives you an example of where we bring two sporting groups together, and hopefully the sum of the two is better than the individuals.
Really interesting. Thanks, Mark. And then Kevin.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm Kevin Smith. I'm the founder of Maritime Digital Hub. Maritime Digital Hub is a not-for-profit organisation. It was created purely because I've been working in the maritime industry, mainly with Mersey Maritime and Maritime UK over the last few years. And the big disconnect that we found is that no one understood what I was talking about. And clearly, like some of the words that we've all just used and the words I see on the PowerPoint, these are words that most people don't understand, and they don't understand how the application of these words. So one of the first things that we said with Maritime Digital Hub, and it's something that one of our team, Rosie's very, very fond of, and she created, is the idea of a digital language pledge. And it's the idea of creating a glossary and a way to translate these words that we all use, that we understand, into all the other divisions in the supporting roles and the operation roles within maritime. 90% of people within the maritime sector aren't engineers. They don't understand technology. They're not data experts. Like my main role in all the consultancy I do is around data and technology. And this idea of being able to create a simplified way of understanding means that more people will be able to spot innovation at the coalface. And that's really what we were trying to achieve. So in terms of what we're doing and where our kind of projects lie and what we're doing, they're not as fancy, unfortunately, as autonomous vehicles and F1 racing teams. But what we're really focused on and what we really believe in is the careers development and making sure that people are ready for this next evolution of working. And we do that in partnership with people like Microsoft and HP, and we're bringing digital skills training at that grassroots level so that people can start to understand the basic concepts that allows them to then flow into that intelligent discussion about innovation. So for me, that's really the starting point for not just maritime, but for all the industries I work in, is getting that knowledge down at the grassroots level, getting people to understand why it's important to understand these these buzzwords that we're seeing on the deck right now, and how that can apply. Because in all the work I've done over the years in digital workers and frontline end user compute consultancy, it's usually the person doing the job that knows the better way of doing the job. It's not usually the strategy team that implements a global strategy change that actually gets it right first time. It's about, like what Sarah was saying, it's about bringing that human system construct together. So that's what we're doing, and that's kind of where I feel the biggest change needs to be.
Great. So I think thanks everybody who's kind of inputting their answers to the question that we've got. So I think it feels like a good time to put the same question to the panel. And in the interest of time, perhaps we won't pick three, but perhaps if between us we can pick kind of the one or possibly two that come together for us that we see as the real opportunities within the industry. And I think you might agree that often when we're looking at these opportunities, we're looking at them hand in hand with the challenges that we're trying to come up with solutions for. And often in maritime, and for sure in other sectors, those things can be very, very closely related, if not the same thing. So for example, looking at the word that's coming up very strongly in the word cloud based on the answers from the audience is decarbonisation. And this is something that I would articulate as both a challenge and an opportunity for the sector. Particularly given the year that a lot of people have had, it's been very challenging. Then we're emerging from some of the worst bits of the pandemic, and the sector's done fantastically well in terms of rearranging itself to meet these challenges. But as we come out of this and we head into the next couple of years, we're butting up against some, pretty strong targets around net zero and decarbonisation, and taking the opportunity to try and align some of those expectations whilst continuing to operate successfully in a business that can be commercially viable is something that is a challenge, I think, a challenge for the sector. And for sure, we're rising to meet it. And these new technologies and these innovations and bringing across ideas from other sectors, such as the examples that Mark, Kevin and Clive just gave, I think creates, it just expands the opportunity that's here for the sector today. So I wonder if I could ask the panel, please, to pick one of the big opportunities and maybe partner challenge that they'd like to really discuss today and highlight from their perspective. Clive, to you first, please.
Well, let's go for the big one then, decarbonisation. It's there centre screen. Why not take that as the first challenge? And I think that the challenge of decarbonisation probably isn't as big as we think it is. It's a big challenge, but it's not an insurmountable challenge. And there are lots of opportunities that we have to tackle that. So I'm gonna pick on one. So Maritime UK have recently funded a project that is going to be delivered here in Liverpool, where it's looking at significant decarbonisation of marine. It's looking at wind farms. So if you consider wind farms zero carbon, but then the ships that go out and the vessels that go out to service those wind farms are all diesel powered. So in a way, you're maintaining a zero carbon environment with a diesel powered product, which really doesn't sound to me to be right. So the project that we're talking about, and which has the first phase already funded, is to look at a vessel that will be able to go out and service the wind farms, which is absolutely zero carbon. And we're working on that. We're looking at all of the different technologies that we can apply. The most simple, of course, would be to say if we had a hydrogen economy, we can drive the diesel engines using hydrogen fuel instead of using diesel fuel. Simple solution, not very efficient. But then there are other fuels based on hydrogen that we can start to look at. And there's also electrification. With the ships, you could use the batteries as the ballast rather than have to ballast the ships other ways. So lots of ways of going about this. We're going through the process of the first phase at the minute, which is the feasibility study. And then we want to build a ship. And that gives us a bit of an issue, because where do we get the funding from to build a ship, which is probably going to be £50 million? Now, we know that number 10 want to drive shipbuilding. So here is a great opportunity. We know that they're looking at a new loan guarantee scheme, which is great. But why can't we have a project the same way that we do in aerospace or automotive? So in aerospace, we have the Aerospace Technology Institute, which has got something like £2 to £3 billion that is used, match funding across industry on various projects. And there's something like £1 billion in automotive for the Advanced Propulsion Centre. Why can't we have that in marine? And what we're told is there are state aid restrictions on shipbuilding. So we can't set up a scheme right now to be able to do that. But we're coming out of Brexit in a few months' time. Does that change it that allows us to get that funding to be able to do that work? And that one element of intervention actually is game-changing for decarbonisation of the industry, because it gives us that first step to move forward and then expand much broader.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And I think that really responds, doesn't it, to Sarah's question around what enabling systems or tools or policies or culture change do we need to really see to make sure that we can really exploit some of these new innovations and technologies that come forward. And I think within a maritime sector, particularly when we're thinking about ports, this is so important. You know, it's a competitive sector. And in order for everybody to be able to embrace some of these new technologies and embed them within their existing operations, they need to be able to do that in a level way, in a way that's not going to disrupt some of their business planning in the short, medium and longer term, and therefore put them in an awkward or a difficult position with their competitors, particularly as we emerge from this sort of challenging time in 2020. Mark, I wonder if I could bring the same question to you now.
Well, I mean, it's really sort of following on from what Clive was saying. I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning, at Artemis, we're already in the beginning of a 41-month project, which is to develop and manufacture a 45 knot plus zero emissions fast foiling vessel. That has a range of applications, from the application Clive was talking about through to significant passenger ferry application. So I think the technology is there. I mean, at Artemis, we've invested over 200 million on hydrofoiling alone. You know, this technology requires significant investment, including, say, the energy recovery systems, etc. I mean, just to add in a couple of additional points, just in the word cloud, I think on the autonomy and that side, I mean, autonomy means many things to many people. In our application, it's autonomous control systems. So effectively, we are flying the vessel under the water on the foils. So we have very complicated control systems to do that autonomously. And that then goes back into the digital twin aspect, which again, Clive mentioned right at the beginning, which is really important. So we have a large human-in-the-loop simulator, which is then linked into hardware in the loop. So we actually have the hardware being driven off the simulator real time. Now coming into from a funding aspect, we're relatively well sorted. But you know, if there was further investment in a sort of ATI type application for maritime, then being able to expand that experimental testing and expand the hardware in the loop would be very helpful, because that helps not only accelerate development, but also helps sort of improve robustness and therefore reduce servicing costs, etc., for the end product. So I think, you know, we're at the beginning of a journey. It's really exciting. Obviously, there's multiple people looking at similar things, which is great for the industry and great for the UK. But I think in terms of support, with the amount of impact that this can have, I think in terms of overall funding, it is still relatively light.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, picking up the idea of automation and autonomous vessels and vehicles, and potentially the use of robotics as it increases throughout the sector. And I know there's concerns, isn't there, in terms of what that might mean in terms of jobs and the creation of new jobs, and perhaps the changes in some of the jobs, and what that means for the upskilling piece that we discuss quite a lot as a sector. Kevin, I wonder if you could talk a little bit in terms of that with respect to the skills side of things, and how you see the opportunities for the sector in terms of meeting this.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think this again goes back to you know, just to touch on the decarbonisation point as well. Is one of the things that I've been in so one of the roles I do and what I'm doing, actually the reason why I'm sat in this cupboard right now in this office in Brussels, is that I'm working on a decarbonisation project for the data centre world. And actually one of the components we're using for liquid cooling for the system was built on a ship. Right, so it's very linked to the maritime. It's not a tenuous link, but the decarbonisation piece needs much more of a life cycle approach. Everybody's looking at this from what we can do from a ship perspective, but you know, your systems, your simulation data, your AI, your processing, your smartphones, your laptops, you name it, it all has a life cycle approach. And this, if we take an approach that's much bigger and much broader, looks at all of those elements in parallel, because they can be done in parallel. We'll get to the targets quicker. If you look at data center and the data center world,
we are the enemy of the world right now and being told that, you know, all of the electricity in the world is going to be used by people using Snapchat. It's probably true, to be honest, or Instagram. I'm not sure of the newest one. But the fact is that these are things that we could also be doing in parallel. And I think that that's what comes back to this skills training and the piece, is that what we need to do is we need to take a more simple approach to training and upskilling people in the get it. And like I said before about this kind of grassroots approach. A lot of the time, it's the engineers that really know what they're doing and understand the problems of the decarbonisation of the autonomous vehicle layout. I work a lot in AI, specifically with people like NVIDIA, so I understand simulation and digital twin and all these things. But a lot of people at the front line don't. But I think that nowadays it's a lot more obtainable because, you know, thanks to the internet, we now have access to pretty much an unlimited amount of knowledge at any given point in time. All you need to do is direct people to things of interest and they will learn. You know, that's the idea of teaching. You give someone a place to learn. We've done a lot of work in virtual reality and showing that actually even doing simple things like putting PowerPoint presentations into a virtual reality environment, it keeps with the Minty piece as well. You've got people asking questions, so they're interacting. So learning comes down to those very simple things of it's how do you obtain learning and knowledge, and how do you get that learning and knowledge to be retained by the user? And what we've got to do is we've got to take this very complicated language and these very complicated topics and simplify them and make them more engaging using things like, there's a lot of technologies available, game engines, gamification, all these things. So one of the things, and this is one of the things that we're really looking to do, is to try and start at that kind of college level of getting people interested in what the sea really means for them and what the industry does. You know, until I got involved 3 years ago, I couldn't tell you that 95% of all of our trade came via shipping. You know, I would never have even thought about it. But for you guys, it's very obvious, and that's kind of what we need to do, is start with the really obvious things and work from there. I hope that explains my kind of view on that.
Yeah, it's very useful, thanks. I think you touched on another really useful point as well, and I think that's the pace of evolution and innovation around technology at the moment is really impressive. You know, we're in a period of accelerated development, and an awful lot of new ideas are kind of being brought to the market and going through those feasibility stages and are really kind of speeding up. And one of the concerns that often gets expressed to me is around the potential for stranded or redundant assets. So if you make an investment decision and then the pace of change is so rapid that in, you know, a relatively short period of time, in old money, if you like, you end up with some assets that perhaps aren't performing or aren't doing what you anticipated or hoped that they would be in a position to help you with at the point where you invested. So I think that's something that also we need to be thinking about. And I wonder if there is something that we can particularly learn from other sectors, thinking again about that collaboration piece, that knowledge sharing. You know, they've been through this trajectory, if you like, in many places and before. What can we perhaps take from other sectors to help us on that journey? Clive?
Yeah, I'd like to sort of use that to talk about robotics and automation, which are other two big points that are coming up on the screen. And throughout my career, where I've seen the adoption of robotics and automation, there has always been this fear of people losing their jobs. And yet, in every time that we've put in a robotics or an automated application, rather than reduce the number of people who are employed, we've increased the number of people that have been employed. And people are not employed in the same job, they're employed in a different job, which is a higher skilled job and a higher paid job. So when you bring the automation and the robotic technology into the business, you have to couple that with a upskilling program, because if you fail to bring in the upskilling program, you lose the benefit of the automation and you lose the confidence of the people. So that's really important. And I've just been working on a project for a small company in a place called Wirral in the Black Country. They employ about 100 people. They make components for the auto industry, and they patented a component in the 1960s that they made for 30 or so years. Then it was no longer competitive to do it in the UK, so they shipped it out to China. They've been working on importing it from China for the last God knows how many years. And in the last 12 months, they brought it back to the UK, and they can now make it cheaper than they could make it in China. They've got more flexibility. They've got the ability to customize the product. They've got lower stock. They don't have such inventory that's on the sea and all of those sort of things, bringing a lot more flexibility to it. And they increased their profitability and increased their workforce by 50% in the same timescale. And that's all because they've applied automation and robotics in a structured way. And again, we did that with digital technology. So we created a digital twin of the factory. We determined what the best manufacturing process would be. And then we rapidly deployed that based upon the digital information. So you couple in digital, you couple in automation, and you bring all of these things together with an upskilling program. And we have an opportunity to reshore much of the work that we've lost in the past and drive manufacturing forward and the marine sector forward in the UK.
Yeah, that's really exciting to hear some really concrete examples of where that's come together and had such amazing outcomes. Mark, it looked like you were poised to add to what Clive was saying there.
Yeah, so going on to the collaboration, I mean, just to spend a few minutes talking about something which happened only a few months ago, but it seems a lifetime ago. So on the day of lockdown at Innovate, I was looking after a COVID-19 response. And obviously the F1 teams had stopped racing in Melbourne. It was cancelled. So we got all 7 UK F1 teams together, along with their supply chain and Formula One management, and established what was called Project Pit Lane to help support the UK Ventilator Challenge. And just to give you a feel for the sort of the strength of collaboration, those are 7 teams that would be fighting each other day in, day out, on various race courses. But we had a call from the head of sort of research at NHS England on, I think it was Friday night, about a very promising ventilator, which was at a really early stages. And on the Saturday afternoon, we had it on the bench at Red Bull with all 7 teams around it, all in their kit, running around Red Bull. It was quite a sight to see. And within 3.5 weeks, they took that early stage prototype to MHRA ready type approval, which is a process that would typically take about 3 years. So that was done in 3.5 weeks. In conjunction with helping the great work that Clive and the rest of the high value manufacturing catapult, and to be honest, countless companies across the UK, both large and small, were doing in this really sort of collaborative venture to build ventilators at scale and at pace in a highly regulatory environment. And I think just looking back at it, if you speak to some of those large companies, they retrospectively could, if you'd asked them 5-6 months ago, would they have been able to open their doors, have small companies come in, walk in, work on their systems and help develop these things, they would say no, it just would have been too difficult. But I think there's been a learning on how to collaborate through this pandemic, and that's something that we mustn't lose sight of, and something that I think from a maritime perspective, there's a lot of knowledge that can be transferred from what, say, Clive and high value manufacturing have looked at, some of the large companies, both aerospace, automotive, and even some of the smaller companies in F1 teams. So I think that learning has to be brought into the maritime, because that collaborative sort of mindset is really important.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and it reflects conversations that have been had across the sector. And it's interesting. I think we could discuss any one of these topics at great length. It's always such a fascinating area of evolving change and discussion. But sadly, we're kind of drawing to the end of the time that we have available for this panel. So what I wanted to just do is just refer back to the word cloud and to pick out the top 5 topics that have really come to the fore from the audience, and those are in no particular order: decarbonisation, collaboration, automation of the supply chain, robotics and autonomous vessels, etc., and then the big data. And as we move into the Q&A session, I thought it would be really useful if you're happy to within the audience and also on the panel to just take the opportunity to rank these. So out of these 5 opportunities, we recognise that there are many more, but out of these 5, how would you, based on your experience and your perspective and where you work within the sector, how would you rank those based on where we are today? And if you can do that as we move through to the Q&A, then perhaps as Chris chairs that, then he can pick up on some of those and funnel them through to the panel in terms of questions that we might be able to answer. So I think in wrapping up then, I just want to thank the panel and just hand over to Chris if he wants to pick up Q&A.
That was absolutely fantastic. I could stand and listen to this all day, but I know we've been texting you, Caroline, because we have been inundated with questions. So I also know, Clive, we're on a bit of a tricky hard wicket with you, so I'm going to be throwing some questions to you first, if I may. So, as I say, we're absolutely spoiled for choice. So thank you, everyone, for sending these in. Clive, will automation mean many more smaller units delivering directly rather than the current trend for even larger, cheaper units? So what's the effect automation will have, do you think, on logistics?
I think the thing about automation and linking that back with digital manufacturing means that there's going to be a lot more just-in-time delivery, and so the point about smaller units delivering these systems and products is absolutely true. So you will have smaller vessels, smaller trucks, smaller delivery vehicles, because you'll be looking at a just-in-time capability, and you'll be able to look at a bespoke product rather than a standard product that you have to adapt your application to the standard product.
Thank you. Kevin, you're a bit of a tech maestro. Tell me the effect of digital technology on the actual logistics chain.
Well, this is an interesting one. So supply chain obviously is a massive thing the technology industry has always tried to be part of, because from everything from data collection to data processing through to analytics, every cloud provider on the planet. But this be clear, the clear indicator of how digital is having a massive effect on this is our well-known friends, Amazon. Because if anyone's doing it at scale and advancing quicker, it's Amazon. So I would say to most people, if you want to look at the future of most of the digital transformation, you do have to look at people like Amazon. And the reason why they're successful, it's all about agility and iteration. They can iterate at speeds. I once had a meeting with Amazon and a large bank who I won't name, and the bank was very impressed the fact that they could release their updates to their applications and software at 4 a month. And Amazon said, well, we release 1 million a week. So it was a bit embarrassing for the bank, but that just gives you the order of magnitude of change and iteration in the digital world. But it all comes down to you being supplied the data to be able to do it.
And this actually segues very nicely into you, Caroline. You're not going to get off with any of these questions. I tell you, even though you've hosted the panel incredibly well, Caroline, digital technology and ports. And this actually leads me to an energy hub question that we've had now. But what are the 3 key things that a port should do to embrace digital technology?
Well, I think it's interesting, isn't it? We've seen a lot over recent years, ports generating more and more data and almost getting into a position where they're acting as data hubs, both in terms of their own assets and their kind of day-to-day operations, but also in terms of their estate management. And as organisations tend to bring together sometimes quite disparate groups of customers, supply chain operators, and other parties within the kind of environs of the port itself. So I think that in terms of 3 things that ports probably need to embrace is they probably need to embrace that role as a data hub. That's we're going to see that increasing. I think they're going to continue to be you know, the kind of the focal point within their stakeholder group in terms of the data and the way that's kind of used. I think the other thing that they're going to need to think about is the way that data can feed into the digital tools that are available in terms of driving efficiency through operations, whether that's to do with emissions or to do with traffic management or to do with the way that they kind of commodities pass through their estate. That's the second way. And I think the third way that digital tools are going to be really helpful is in terms of taking the really interesting and most useful and most innovative aspects of things like autonomy and around alternative fuels and bringing them together to help them become more efficient and effective to meet the challenges of tomorrow.
Thank you. And I want to come back to you in a little while because I want to talk about the roles that ports need to play in the whole energy distribution. But before that, Mark, we've had a great question about, and this is something we talk about all the time in the office. So we know ships have a life of what, 20, 30 years-ish? Fuel costs being the biggest driver of ownership and operating cost. Isn't there a real timetable conflict here? So obviously, I'm presuming this to do with obviously the Maritime 2050, Maritime 2040, decarbonisation challenges. And I suppose, we kind of know there are challenges and there's a conflict, but what have you learned in Artemis? How confident are you with the technology you're working on that we can bring it forward and really support a lot of these ship owners?
So I think their confidence level is high, and it's high because this is marrying two technologies which have been proven in their separate fields, and everything that we do, and particularly high performance sport is very good at this. Both in America's Cup and F1 is doing the simulations, and before you hit the track or hit the water, you are extremely close to the end product in terms of the outcome. So when you're doing something brand new, which a fully submerged sort of electric powered hydrofoil is, then obviously there are uncertainties. But I think you try to minimize those uncertainties through the digital twin, through your simulation, your simulator, and the hardware in the loop testing. So I think, yes, there are risks and unknowns, as there will always be in any new project, but you aim to mitigate those risks. And this is where the collaboration comes in, bringing the skills, the technologies, and that knowledge together to form a really powerful team.
No, thank you for that. Sorry, I was smiling at some of these great statements. I'm just going to read a quick one, and this is, again, everyone's, no one's putting their names next to this, which is good, actually, I think. So one statement is, I love change, however, sometimes we should forget about what we already know, i.e. when the USA spent $5 million working on an underwater rubber, an underwater pen, and the UK just used pencil. So again, this is really about the interesting use of technology. I know, Clive, that you have to go in just a couple of seconds, but if I can just jump on that and ask you this question. Great talk by Sarah Kenny. I agree we need to welcome change, but how do we ensure that we maintain what is working and not throw the baby out with the bathwater? So we know some stuff works, but do we always have to change for change's sake, and how do we get that balance right?
Okay, before I answer that, I just want to add something to what was said about Amazon and the rate of change of Amazon, because one of the things that is enabling Amazon to get that rate of change is the amount of effort that they're putting into skilling their workforce and to upskilling their workforce. So the biggest percentage of apprentices that I have at MTC right now are all from Amazon. Now, you wouldn't have expected me to say that. You'd have said they're coming from aerospace or automotive. They're not. They're coming from Amazon. So I just wanted to put that point there. But how do you make sure you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater is a really good question, isn't it? Because I think what you have to look at is to say, what are the things that do work and why do they work, but challenge why they work as well. I mean, there's the saying that says, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. But isn't there also a saying that says, if it isn't broke, have you looked hard enough?
Well, I almost think we should open that up to the panel, actually. So I'm actually going to open that up to Kevin.
Oh, well, so yeah, so I mean, this is an interesting question in itself, isn't it? So, I mean, Chris, you and I have spoken about this quite a few times, where pen and paper does work sometimes, isn't it? Not everyone needs an iPad, you know. But
I hate iPads. If you're not to be freaking out with all these things, it's been shocking. Shocking.
Well, we've had loads of feedback, Chris. You've done a great job, by the way, with all that technology around you. But the reality is that, and it comes down to, you know, Clive's point around upskilling, and what we talk about with upskilling people. It's getting people the tools and understanding to see that the change is an evolutionary change, and it's something to help them. Look at digital workers. Everyone thinks a digital worker is going to take away your jobs. It's not. It's going to do the thing that Microsoft told us they were going to do for us 20 years ago, which was when they implement technology, our work-life balance would get better. I don't work less than 16 hours a day. I don't know when this is coming. But the point is, digital workers is the idea that, you know, when you finish at 5 o'clock, something continues doing your jobs for you for when you come back in the morning. Now, if we explain that to people properly and show them, I'm pretty sure everyone wants one of those. In fact, I'm sure, Chris, you're going to contact me about one of those later. But that's how I would explain it. It all goes back to that education, training, skills piece.
And Mark, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, there's one thing that we haven't discussed today, which is regulation and regulatory legislation. And I think when you try and do something new, it's both an opportunity and a threat. This is something that we have to, as we try to look at decarbonisation and autonomy, working with the regulators along the whole journey, right from the beginning, so there's no surprises. There'd be nothing worse than coming with a fantastic capability and system only to find that the regulatory environment doesn't handle it. So that working and engaging with the regulators at the beginning is one thing which I think from any new technologies in this area we have to do and have to do well. But I think it's a great opportunity for the UK.
Thank you, Clive. I know you have to shoot off now. And we've actually made you late, but thank you so much for today. And honestly, your insight has been invaluable.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
So we'll see you soon. So then there are three, and I'm looking, how much time do we have, John? We have 0, but I kind of have one. See, this is the problem. We have so many questions. I'm like a child in a candy store with these. Right, I'm just going to ask one more, and I'm going to try and link it all, I think. So bear with me. So when we're talking about autonomous vehicles, how far along the road are we? And this is for all the panel, but I think I'm going to start with Caroline. How far along the road are we from ports being able to accept them, and are ports switched on and willing to accept them? So, and this probably links to your regulatory comment, Mark, but also, and I'm jumping around to Kevin. Kevin, from a data point of view, what does that look like? The sheer data is needed. So if we could speak to Caroline first. Caroline, how ready are ports to take on autonomous vehicles?
So I think the first thing to say is that there's a lot of enthusiasm, and the port sector has been and it continues to be very open to these sorts of things. I mean, as you would expect, probably with imports, and I would say probably across a lot of the maritime sector, there are a lot of questions around safety. There are concerns around safety of seafarers and for other vessels, particularly when you're looking at marine autonomous vessels. But there's certainly a lot of work going on. There's lots going on in the sector, lots of development that's happening really, really fast. And certainly ports are looking at how they can best prepare themselves to be able to respond to the vessels that as they kind of change, and also supply chain and customer expectations around that, because that's the other thing. You know, ports don't operate in a vacuum. They are kind of part of a network of goods coming in and out, and they're not, as well as thinking about their own operations, they need to think about how they interface with their partners and keep pace with the industry as it moves. In terms of just picking up a few examples of where this is probably already happening, is, you know, there are lots of autonomous bits of kit that are happening within the land estate. So whether that's around moving commodities around within the port estate, or helping to make sure that they can deliver some real efficiencies around things like container stacking, that's where we're seeing some of that stuff happening already and becoming embraced more widely across the sector. But I think, yeah, the key thing to say really is that ports have got their finger on the pulse of this. There are certain ports that are further ahead than others, but I think it's going to be something that we see a real step change with over the coming years.
Caroline, thank you so much. I've just been shouted at, by the way, from John, who's running the entire place, because I wanted to hear Kevin get involved, and I wanted to listen to Mark's, or a little bit more from Mark, about regulation. What this does, however, mean is that we definitely need another one of these, because we're judging by how many people have stayed on, which has been tons, and the amount of questions and interaction that we've had for the whole day and for this final panel. So if I may, without any further ado, thank you so much, panel. Kevin, Mark, thank you. Caroline, amazing. We've spoken loads, but we haven't actually met yet. But at some point, we would love to welcome you up here, and we can do another one of these events physically. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And as we talk about technology, I've just somehow broken this. So this is why I'm much better with a pen and some paper. That draws us to the end of today, of our first ever Maritime Exchange hybrid conference. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for sticking with us. If you've taken one nugget away from all the great speakers, all the great conversations we've had, all the great knowledge which have been shared, it's been absolutely worth our time in doing it. Today is all about collaboration and partnership, and without our members, without our friends, without the Maritime Exchange sponsors, the Royal Navy, Royal Haskening, DHV, Nautilus International and Wirral Waters, it wasn't going to happen. We didn't really have the confidence enough without all of our parties. We'd like to thank Meat and Potato and our amazing events production team, because this is kind of cool. And we are in leafy Cheshire, so so we're all comfortable with that. We'd also like, and this is another thank you to Royal Haskening and DHV, and I'd like to thank them for letting us kidnap JJ, who's the smartest man in England, who is our Stato today, who enabled the interaction to be seamless. So JJ, thank you. And of course, one final thank you to my Mersey Maritime team, to Ruth, Simon, Suzanne and Stacey, who, considering we only really pressed the button on this thing 3 and a bit weeks ago, we're pretty happy with it. It's gone well. So we look forward to seeing you, our members, again on the first Tuesday of November, which is the 2nd of November, where we're going to talk more about Richard Maudsley, well, more about Wirral Waters, and Richard Maudsley is going to do it. So we've kind of put him in the chair on that. But remember, Mersey Maritime, the sole reason we're here is to support you and our industry. So let us know if there's any issues, any challenges, and if you need support in any way, shape or form, just get into contact with us. So thank you again. Thank you everyone for staying. We've held good solid numbers, and we'll see you all very soon. Thank you.